Não é neste, é no outro. Ok. O som.
State by origin? Okay, yesterday you told us you traveled, and I quote, thousands of light years to get here. Yes. Tell us the truth or the word will never leave you. It is true. I found out. So I take it aliens took over our future, right? So you're human. Okay, so you evolved from us. So what are you doing here now? How? Okay, so how about we concentrate on your time? Try me.
Para investir na tesoura, tenho que ir 99 pessoas. Tem 3 likes, apenas uma pessoa a assistir.
Wait, so you know the meaning of what?
Well, if only one people watching, we're gonna change for another one. Volta ao próximo. Tenho uns amigos de merda. Olha, incrível. Next one. Ih, caralho. Não aparece as legendas.
Alfeizerão, setembro de 1975.
Então a puta das legendas.
Aproximada 1h da manhã. Depois de uma viagem a Peniche, João Belo regressa calmamente a casa, situada em Alcobaça. Subitamente, perto da localidade de Feizerão, avista algo extraordinário. Algo de que nunca mais se irá esquecer.
Isso é a puta das legendas, meu.
Se existe algum estereótipo marcadamente assumido como representativo de uma marca extraterrestre, de uma tecnologia, de um outro mundo, esse de facto é o disco voador. De facto, neste encontro imediato de hoje, a descrição é típica desse tipo de objeto que marcou a indústria cultural norte-americana, sobretudo a partir dos anos 40 do século XX. É esta narrativa que
de 1975 e depois de uma viagem a Peniche, João Belo fazia a viagem de regresso à sua casa, na cidade de Alcobaça. Como já era tarde e como o seu automóvel não se encontrava nas melhores condições, João Belo conduzia bastante concentrado na estrada. A viagem decorria sem qualquer sobressalto. Contudo, nas proximidades da localidade de Alfeirão, João Belo reparou que, um pouco à frente do seu automóvel, duas fortes luzes incidiam verticalmente na estrada. O primeiro pensamento que teve foi a de que, provavelmente, aquelas duas luzes não eram mais do que as luzes dos faróis do seu automóvel, que, entretanto, deveriam ter tombado. Para comprovar a sua teoria, resolveu então desligar as luzes da sua viatura. Mas, para seu espanto, aquelas duas fortes luzes continuaram a incidir na estrada, mesmo à sua frente. Intrigado, decidiu abrandar o seu carro para tentar perceber de onde provinham tão estranhas luzes. Ao olhar para cima, qual não foi o seu espanto quando percebeu que aquelas luzes estavam a ser emitidas por algo que voava no céu e que parecia estar a acompanhá-lo na sua viagem. Amedrontado com aquele misterioso cenário, a sua reação imediata foi a de acelerar a velocidade do seu automóvel de forma a esquivar-se daquela perseguição. No entanto, a alguns quilómetros à frente, reparou que, na berma da estrada, dois outros homens olhavam estupefactos para o céu. Foi então que resolveu finalmente parar. E, ao olhar para o céu, João Belo deparou-se com algo verdadeiramente incrível, algo como nunca antes tinha visto. Sobre si estava um extraordinário objeto voador de dimensões verdadeiramente fantásticas e depressa concluiu que aquelas duas estranhas luzes que o haviam perseguido anteriormente provinham daquela insólita nave. Foi então que aquele incrível objeto voador abrandou seu voo até parar bem perto dos três homens. Depois, as duas luzes apagaram-se e os detalhes daquela estranha aeronave tornaram-se completamente perceptíveis. Era um objeto redondo e cinzento metalado, com luzes de pequenas dimensões a toda a sua volta. Na sua parte inferior eram visíveis duas saliências, idênticas às turbinas dos aviões. Contudo, essa mesma nave não parecia ter qualquer tipo de propulsão evidente. Aquele insólito objeto voador esteve parado sobre os três homens cerca de minuto e meio, sem fazer qualquer tipo de ruído. Depois, retomou o voo e afastou-se. João Belo nunca tinha visto nada semelhante em toda a sua vida e, com uma crescente curiosidade, resolveu meter-se novamente no seu carro para tentar perseguir aquele estranho objeto. Contudo, não conseguiu avistar mais nada no céu. E é assim que João Belo recorda aquela noite de setembro de 1975.
Eu vinha de Peniche e quando cheguei ali assim, portanto, junto ao cruzamento da, como é que se chama, a terra, fechando a parada, bocadinho antes, vejo à frente do meu carro uns faróis, de cima para baixo, e eu pensei que fossem os meus faróis do meu carro tivessem caído. Entretanto, fechei a luz do carro e não a ver os faróis. Foi quando eu abrandei o carro e abri a porta, sempre a guiar, devagarinho, e olho para cima e vejo os faróis de cima para baixo. Ganhei medo, porque foi numa altura, pronto, a verão quente da situação política. Eu sou um cidadão, portanto, americano, não é? Ganhei medo. Acelerei o carro, o mais puto, vim sempre fora, sempre, prontos, com medo. E quando me chega ali assim ao Pão de Ló, ao Feijarão, paro o carro porque vejo dois sujeitos monitorizados a olharem para o ar. É percebendo que estão ali dois sujeitos monitorizados, parados, a olharem para o céu.
I was expecting to have more people here, but anyway. Another one.
Planetary size.
Oh, another one.
And they're being hidden away and interrogated.
Today's June. I'm outside my house with my family. You can see people are saying that we disappeared, the news stations. You know, what I learned these couple of days, that everything on TV is fake, and especially the news channels, they'll say fake stuff, and it's not true. You know, I already said what I had to say. If you want to believe it, I don't care no more. I just want to, you guys understand, because if you guys have depression, I have anxiety attacks, and I just want to be normal again. I don't feel okay, guys. And just move on, guys. Forget about it and just bye.
Bye.
The most compelling and incredible UFO landing of our history has now been fully analyzed, and I can show you the extraterrestrial entities, as well as a chilling update. Let's start with the report.
Cam catches this. Something flashing low in the sky.
911 emergency.
Minutes later, there's like an 8-foot person beside it, and another one just, and it has big eyes and it's looking at us. And it's
You can actually hear part of this phone call in the actual alien footage.
Her backyard.
I'm so nervous right now.
The 8 News Now investigators obtaining another officer's video as he's sent to the Northwest Valley home.
I have butterflies, bro. Everyone thought a shooting star, then these people said there's aliens in their backyard.
By now, it's more than an hour after that bright light. Officers meeting up with the caller and his family.
What'd you see?
You can actually still tell how nervous the family is.
Creature?
yeah, like a long texting top.
I'm not going to BS you guys. One of my partners said they saw something fall out of the sky too, so that's why I'm kind of curious. Did you see anything land in your backyard? Or?
They see like a big, that's what they say. They see like a big something with light.
No, I do believe in it.
Police walk into the backyard to investigate, but Metro blacked out that part of the video because it's considered private.
And just how convenient is that? Thank God we got the actual footage.
Hey, this might sound like a really dumb question, but did you guys see anything fall out of the sky?
Asking others what they saw.
I would normally discount it as nothing. However, seeing as one of my partners said they saw it too, only reason I'm actually investigating.
Now, this is the actual footage that was uploaded to TikTok with the aliens in the yard. I'm going to let you guys watch the original, and then I will show you the version I processed highlighting the beings. Notice how the family is fully armed. He has a gun in his hand, ready to shoot. That is how scared they are. He literally just said, oh my god, it has giant eyes and a big mouth.
Hablarlo, dile que a casa no prendí. Viene un show, cédalo. Vaya, medicales un letico.
If you pay close attention, you can actually see the beings in the tractor blinking and looking at the family. I'll actually highlight it in the processed video. Now, this is the best that I do with the video I received.
Anda el camión, no, Concha, dígate el camión. Era segundo, de que el de para acá, de cables.
Kay, quiero tiene camión la de él.
Concha, costelo, Concha, sí, sí, lo.
Kay, forklift o camión.
Yo tomo muy. Castelo, pegachar y palarlo, que te acuerdo con la. Palarlo, dile que a casa no prendí. Viene un show, o sea, peluchar y cuidado. Vaya, medicales un letico.
Kay.
Costelo, de que acá, dile que acá callale, hay un muy pelón, sin pelón, varón pelón. Echaron los dos, dijeron ready. Concha, que la de hecho trabajo.
As you can see here, I circled one of the creatures. The other one is standing right behind him. Don't worry, I've also enhanced some images from these stills so that you can get a better look at what we're seeing here.
Castelo, pegachar y palarlo, que te acuerdo con la. Palarlo, dile que a casa no prendí. Viene un show, o sea, peluchar y cuidado. Vaya, medicales un letico.
Kay.
Circled is a creature in the tractor, and now I'm going to highlight the one right behind him. Look at this. Look at its big eyes. What's more concerning is this update I'm going to add next. The entire family has now gone missing.
Get a read on this family. The family has ghosted everybody. They're not responding to interviewers that they made appointments with. They're not responding to telephone calls. I don't even know if they're in the house anymore. But what was your read when you were parked out front for hours and hours?
Yeah, so I'll admit, I drive a black SUV.
Okay, there you go. We can explain the black SUVs away.
Now, the reason they're trying to explain the black SUVs is that many families in the area noticed all of these black SUVs and men in black approaching their house.
I have been able to confirm noise, the big giant boom that the Ring camera had caught at one part of the valley. But there's some more issues with the backyard. Again, I don't want to discount what they're saying, but
now this is pure speculation, but the way that he's stuttering, I feel like he has a lot more information than he's giving up.
The house real slow, taking pictures. As far as movement in the house itself, or in the rear, the backyard, or even in the trailers, it's been dark. And it's been dark for the last few days. So I'm sure that they may have left town. But, I don't know. They may just be laying low.
And Mark, I'll tell you, there's a perfectly good explanation. They're freaking out over all this attention, and so they amscrayed, or, as others would say, they've been taken by the government. And
interesting way to say what you have to say. But that's the whole story as of right now. I'm going to leave you guys with my filtered video to see if you guys can see it again now that you know what you're looking for. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Make sure that you like and subscribe for more UFOs.
Forklift o camión.
Castelo, pegachar y palarlo, que te acuerdo con la. Palarlo, dile que a casa no prendí. Viene un show, o sea, peluchar y cuidado. Vaya, medicales un letico.
Kay.
Costelo, de que acá, dile que acá callale, hay un muy pelón, sin pelón, varón pelón. Echaron los dos, dijeron ready. Concha, que la de hecho trabajo. usted lo pega a hablarlo, que te puedo colar. Hablarlo, dile que a casa non brindi. Viene un show, o sea, pero Charico te ha dado. Vaya, me dígale completico. Dígale.
Here are some exciting coming attractions from Paramount. If there are no UFOs, if ghosts really don't exist, if angels are only a myth, then how do you explain the traces? How do you explain the sounds? And most of all, how do you explain the sightings? Beyond imagination lies the truth. Now you can take home 3 specially compiled editions of Sightings, available only on home video. The UFO Report, the Goat Report, and the Psychic Experience are just $14.95 each from Paramount Home Video. Now available on video cassette.
Yeah.
Sirius 4, you are cleared for deorbit.
Copy, traffic control. Sirius 4, ready for pre-ignition.
Prepare for a journey to the outer limits of human understanding. Travel at the speed of imagination itself. Venture into realms of unimagined vastness, cosmic mystery, and supernatural beauty. Guided by your host, Patrick Stewart.
Come with us, then. All aboard the spacecraft of the imagination.
It's time to embark on a journey from here to infinity, the ultimate voyage. From your starting at a space station orbiting the Earth, you'll engage engines and accelerate into the adventure of a lifetime. Your trajectory will take the solar system to the nearest stars, to the edge of the Milky Way. Plunging into the swirling vortex of a massive black hole, you'll make your way to the very edge of the universe and beyond. Powered by a stunning digital stereo soundtrack, From Here to Infinity is a uniquely produced tour of the wonders of space for adventure lovers of all ages. All brought to life by Patrick Stewart. From Here to Infinity, the ultimate voyage. Priced at only $14.95. On video now from Paramount Home Video.
Engage.
Now available on video cassette. And now we're pleased to bring you our feature presentation.
Patinando.
On this special home video edition of Sightings.
Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Are you seeing this thing zip back and forth?
They're out there, and sightings are on the rise.
Just like it was sliding through the sky, and it tilted like it was looking down at us. It was a bright light that dimmed down to a white speck.
Ordinary people, astronauts, cosmonauts, even former presidents have all seen extraordinary craft doing extraordinary things.
I happened to glance out one time, and there against the black sky was a white object at about a 45-degree angle.
From the historic crash in Roswell, New Mexico,
to unprecedented mass sightings going on right now in the skies over Mexico City. The evidence is mounting. We are not alone.
My Uncle Ted was standing more over here, kind of leaned over like this, and we're talking to this creature.
Are certain people being targeted for terrifying encounters with alien civilizations? Are rumors of bizarre cross-breeding experiments true?
I remember being on a table with my head turned away, not wanting to look at this creature.
Does the government know more than they're willing to tell us?
Our government has flat out lied to us for 40 years or more.
Terror, wonder, conspiracy, transformation. They're all part of the UFO experience.
Hello, I'm Tim White. Are UFOs real? You'll find out in this special report from Sightings. In the vast expanse of space lie wonders unimaginable. Galaxies yet to be discovered. Planets unnamed, unexplored. Exploded stars teeming with the building blocks of life. Scientists are devising new technology to reach these outer worlds, but perhaps someone or something out there has beaten us to it.
It was just a red flash.
It sounded like a swishing sound, sort of.
And I saw this big triangular-shaped 3 lights on each corner coming over my house.
Mysterious lights in the sky. They were like stars.
Sound. It just like was sliding through the sky, and it tilted like it was looking down at us. It was a bright light that dimmed down to a white speck and went back to a red light, down to a white speck, and then just disappeared.
You guys watching this tonight? It's going out. Going straight out.
Are these people sighting extraterrestrial spacecraft? Or is their imagination fueled by movies, books, and television simply misidentified experimental aircraft?
Holy cow!
To answer these questions, we have to look back at the history of UFO sightings. Cave art in Australia and the western United States, painted at least 5,000 years ago by prehistoric civilizations, seems to resemble modern descriptions of creatures from outer space. Halfway around the world, a 13th century fresco inside a church in Yugoslavia includes a flying vehicle. It would be another 700 years before technology made flight possible. The modern age of UFOs began in 1947. Ex-military pilot Kenneth Arnold was flying his plane over the Cascade Mountain Range. He encountered several objects traveling at an extreme rate of speed. Although there are no photographs, Arnold had a drawing made of what he saw. His sighting triggered hundreds more that year across the United States. UFO mania reached a fever pitch in the summer of that year, when the Army Air Force reported recovering a crashed saucer in New Mexico. The next day, the government claimed the disk was only the wreckage of a weather balloon. Sightings of unexplained phenomena weren't limited to just the United States. Marina Popovich, a Soviet pilot with over 100 airspeed and endurance records to her credit, had her first UFO encounter in the mountains of southern Russia.
My first contact with a UFO was a rather special experience. It was in the mountains, and I saw a sharp ray coming out of a huge sparkling ball.
Even some of the men and women who have been in space have reported seeing things they can't explain. Gemini and Apollo astronaut James McDivitt had his own encounter in June of 1966. While in orbit above the Earth, an unidentified object outside the window caught his attention.
I happened to glance out one time, and there against the black sky was a white object. Geometry of it was sort of like a beer can or a Coke can with a pencil sticking out to one of the round edges at about a 45-degree angle.
What was it? McDivitt did snap a few pictures, but after turning the film over to NASA, the film mysteriously disappeared. Was it a clerical error, or evidence of a government conspiracy to hide the truth about what's really out there? A 1990 Gallup poll showed that nearly 50% of Americans believe in the existence of UFOs. This despite the fact that most photographs and film footage of the actual sightings are not very good. The images are scratched, out of focus, or the camera's just too far away to see things clearly. But with the advent of the home video camera, more and more people have captured unexplained phenomena on tape. This home video was shot over Las Vegas in early 1991. It shows 3 objects floating and diving in front of the mountains.
This is a spectacular maneuver. As you say, it goes in front of the mountains. It has the mountain as a backdrop, which gives you a fairly good idea of its distance.
July 2nd, 1947, Roswell, New Mexico. The time and place of the most significant event in UFO history. Something crashed on a remote sheep ranch and was confiscated by the military. But what crashed remains a mystery, fiercely debated for more than 50 years. Roswell, New Mexico. It's as quiet and peaceful today as it has been for decades. But on July 6th, 1947, that tranquility was shattered by a local newspaper headline. Air Force captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. The story described wreckage of a flying disc found near a place called Corona, and it was based on a press release written by the public information officer at Roswell Air Base, Lieutenant Walter Haupt.
This building here, building number 84, is a building I believe that they brought materials from the Corona crash and stored them in here temporarily.
The chief intelligence officer at the base, Major Jesse Marcel Sr., was sent out to the ranch to collect the crash debris and transport it to the Army Air Force headquarters for examination. In the meantime, newspapers all over the western United States picked up the story. But before Marcel had landed his plane and strange cargo, the Air Force issued a second bulletin.
By the time the B-29 with Jesse Marcel and some of the wreckage got to the headquarters 2 hours after they left in Fort Worth, Texas, the fix was already in to kill the story.
The second press release was far different from the first, saying the wreckage was actually from a weather balloon. Could the Army's top intelligence investigators have committed such a basic blunder, failing to recognize the mundane remains of a weather balloon when they first encountered it? No, says nuclear physicist and part-time UFO researcher Stanton Friedman, who's been investigating the Roswell crash for over a decade. He says that while Marcel was in the air, the Roswell base commander, Brigadier General Roger Ramey, got orders from Washington to cover up the incident.
And what he did was arrange for the wreckage of a weather balloon, the radar reflector on a weather balloon.
And for a while, the saucer saga was forgotten, and might have remained so if Major Marcel hadn't rekindled the fire in 1980. Just before he died, Marcel admitted that the weather balloon story had been fabricated to hide the truth. He told Walter Haupt there really was a saucer crash.
He made statements to the effect that it was nothing of this world. It couldn't be bent, torn, cut, pierced, burned. He went through a whole list of them. He said, we just don't have the technology to produce material like I brought in from that ranch.
Stanton Friedman contends that wreckage from an unidentified craft landed 200 miles away from the Roswell site. Friedman and other ufologists believe that this proves that there was not one but 2 crashes over New Mexico on July 2nd, the result of a spectacular mid-air collision. And at the second site, there were survivors.
When I first came up to the craft, the creatures were laying like this in a line, side by side. And the live one was over here.
Gerald Anderson says he was 5 years old when he and his family came across the unearthly wreckage and bodies.
My dad was kind of right about here, and he was sitting like this. My Uncle Ted was standing more over here, kind of leaned over like this, and they were talking to this creature.
Anderson's story matches that of others who were in the area at the time. With the help of hypnotherapy, he's been able to remember the encounter with startling detail. His description matches those from people who claim to have seen aliens. 4 feet tall, grayish skin, large eyes, long skinny arms and fingers. Anderson recalls 2 aliens were dead, A third dying, and a fourth alien survivor seemed to be trying to communicate.
And just suddenly he turned and he looked at me. And when that happened, all kinds of things just started happening inside my head. I started getting sensations of tumbling and falling and an awful loneliness, like there was no way he could possibly get back to where he came from.
Anderson says that within a matter of minutes, the military arrived, sealing off the area. The civilians at the site were threatened with bodily harm if they talked. Nevertheless, in the past 20 years, hundreds of witnesses have come forward, some daring to speak only on their deathbeds.
Since Roswell ushered in the modern age of ufology, there have been more than 200,000 UFO sightings. Most are single craft, witnessed by a single individual, making it virtually impossible for researchers to verify. But since 1991, ufologists have been documenting the largest mass sighting in history in the skies over Mexico City. The sightings began on July 11th, 1991. On that day, there was a total eclipse of the sun. One of the best places in the world to view the eclipse was Mexico City, and for the first time, because of the home video revolution, thousands of people pointed their video cameras to the skies.
Exactly at the time of the full solar eclipse, a disc-shaped craft appears over the city, hovers for over 30 minutes. 17 people on the ground recorded it on home video. And that's never happened before in the history of ufology.
When modern scientists tested the date of the historic solar eclipse, they weren't alone. Some believe the ancient Mayas also predicted the exact date of the eclipse more than 3,000 years ago. This Maya calendar made another startling revelation. It predicted that on the day of the eclipse, a new age of enlightenment would begin. It's referred to as the prophecy of the sixth sun.
The legend of the sixth sun, the new sun, signified by the great eclipse that just occurred, speaks of an opening of knowledge. The sixth sun indicates precisely the moment of its arrival.
Strangely, on the day of the eclipse, something did arrive in the skies over Mexico. Hundreds of those home video cameras that were shooting the eclipse got something completely unexpected. UFOs, unidentified flying objects, all videotaped by hundreds of different people. So far, more than 110 home videos have been verified as containing footage of unexplained craft.
It may sound difficult to believe in a city with almost 20 million people that practically every afternoon you can see a UFO.
Jaime Mason is one of the most respected television journalists in Mexico City today, to the Mexican version of 60 Minutes. Mason calls himself a former skeptic.
During the last year, thousands, and I would say hundreds of thousands of people have witnessed UFOs. What I feel is important as an investigative reporter is the fact that the evidence presented was never questioned. The credibility of the witnesses was attacked, not the proof that they presented.
People from all walks of life videotaped wave after wave of UFOs hovering in the sky. Sightings has obtained the exclusive U.S. rights to these historic tapes. One of the first to come forward with his home video was respected dentist Dr. Marco Antonio Rosas.
The people are definitely not nervous or afraid of the appearances of the UFOs. The people actually like the idea and feel that these appearances can bring some benefit to the Earth.
Since the eclipse, the UFO sightings have continued week in and week out, and the acceptance of the phenomena by government officials has made even the most reticent eyewitnesses willing to come forward. Padre Ferrer, a priest at a local Catholic church, has seen and recorded these mysterious UFOs.
Christ speaks of his kingdom as not being from this world, that his angels would help him. But these writings are very dangerous, and I don't like to use them. But I believe that there is a possibility. I believe there are a lot of possibilities. I came out to take a video of that pine tree against the light. When I came up, I saw the light appear over the mountain over there. It was not an ordinary light. It was blue and very intense. I've never been afraid of something like this. On the contrary, what I've been able to observe has been wonderful. Once a philosopher said, if God is outside of the truth, I'll stay with the truth. So I feel there is no contradiction.
Unlike the U.S., where UFO controversy most often takes place outside the media mainstream, the Mexico mass sightings are discussed openly on national television. Not everyone agrees the UFOs are extraterrestrial craft. But in Mexico, healthy debate on the true origin of these UFOs is encouraged. So, to rule out the possibility that these UFOs are conventional aircraft or an organized hoax, we had our videotape footage analyzed by David Froning, retired chief scientist at a major aerospace firm.
As far as the pictures of in-flight videos, it's about as good as I've seen. They demonstrate a field propulsion and technology that's far beyond anything that I'm aware of that we have today. Most scientists look at these things as not that these are phenomena that violate known physical laws, it's just that they're phenomena that our known laws cannot explain right now.
If these craft do defy the laws of physics as we know them, could they be alien spacecraft? Do they portend a visitation from an enlightened civilization, as some believe? The sightings continue to this day, and there is a growing grassroots movement working in Mexico to find out what or who is patrolling their skies.
UFO experts who conduct serious research have a whole vocabulary to describe their formative science. One term you may not be familiar with is flap. A flap occurs when UFOs appear in waves over a specific area, as in Mexico City. The appearance of a flap has sinister overtones for ufologists.
All around the globe, there are certain places that seem to act as natural UFO magnets. These areas are attracting flaps, or waves of UFOs, that may last for years. There are hotspots in Russia, Europe, and in South America, the heavily populated city of Sao Paulo has had hundreds of sightings by thousands of people. These flaps have prompted researchers to try to find a common pattern or motive.
Anybody who studies this soon becomes almost desperate to understand a pattern or to impose some purpose on the phenomenon.
In the United States, sightings are widespread and occur almost nightly. America's #1 spot is Gulf Breeze, Florida. Ralph Fuller's sighting in 1988 was among thousands of others, but Ralph was the first to capture a UFO on tape.
I don't know what that is out there over the Gulf, but we just had a real bright light. I think it might be a flying saucer.
They seem to spawn one another. The two went to 3 and 4, and ultimately, over a matter of maybe a couple of minutes' time, there were 10 of these lights out over the Gulf, and they seemed to be in some semblance of a formation, but still in all, there was no movement whatsoever, no noise, no sound, nothing of that sort. You see nothing but the Gulf of Mexico. The nearest point of land would be the Yucatan Peninsula, and there were no boats or anything of that type in the area either.
These are skywatchers, amateur UFO enthusiasts in the Gulf Breeze area who go out almost every night of the week with cameras and binoculars in search of UFOs.
What makes a good skywatching area, for one, is a good field of view. That is, being able to have an unobstructed view of the skyline, and ideally you'd like to be away from city lights, but that's not always possible. So we go out in the evening and take our chances. You may have a relaxing evening out under the stars, and then you may be blessed with a sighting. We just never know. We've seen amber-colored lights, 8 lights in a perfect circle gliding and performing maneuvers in the sky. We've seen rows of lights, suggesting lights perhaps around the periphery of a craft.
There are UFO hotspots all over the country.
Gulf breeze, certainly, but also here in New York State, near a little town called Pine Bush. And the hotspots here, near Pine Bush, according to one scientist, have a very special meaning.
Bruce Cornett is a geologist who lives near Pine Bush, New York. After numerous significant sightings of UFOs near his home, he began studying the area with an electromagnetometer.
What I found is that these magnetic anomalies are in specific patterns. And all of the UFO activity, the landings, the sightings where they are taking off and landing, when we've been able to identify specific areas, are associated with these magnetic anomalies.
Are you suggesting that nature created homing devices deep in the ground?
No, I think that it's a reverse. If we are dealing with an alien culture and they are doing something underground, they're using the natural magnetic anomalies to disguise their own magnetic signals.
Are you saying there are, or could be, aliens in the Earth?
I'm not saying it's certain. It is definitely possible, based on what I've seen.
Do you realize how that sounds?
I don't like the idea just simply because it is so outrageous. Then I would have to also add some of the photographic data that I have that shows, at least in one particular case, a UFO going up at a 7-degree dive right down into the ground, what appears to be.
One of the most well-documented sightings in history occurred in Pine Bush on August 6, 1992.
We think in excess of 1,000 people may have seen 2, 3 ships or 4 ships where I took video, and all the police departments across the whole lower New York State area were simply inundated with just hundreds and hundreds of calls.
We looked over the top of the trees, and there was this object there out of nowhere. This great big object. It was about 300 foot wide, the size of a football field hanging over your head, and about 300 foot off the ground.
We looked at our clocks, and we had 3 battery-running clocks, 2 in the kitchen and 1 in the living room. And for some strange reason, all 3 clocks were stopped at the same time.
Just about everyone in Pine Bush has seen a UFO. In his barbershop, Butch Punt hears a lot of stories from eyewitnesses about strange alien encounters.
About 60% of the people around here, I think, have seen something. And some talk about it and some don't. They're just afraid to talk about it. Afraid of ridicule and intimidation. The one that we saw was over at Red Mills Bridge. And there were 6 of us in the car. But it was just so nice. It just glided right over the trees. And we just got out and stood there. Just looked at it. And nobody said a word. But the whole episode was probably 30 seconds. But it was huge. It was bigger than the bridge.
UFOs are cited by all kinds of people, including the most credible professionals that you can find. In addition, when we have multiple witnesses who all tell the same story, then we could say, well, that's probably a pretty good report. If we have enough detail in a given report that we can rule out all of the normal explanations, it's not the planet Venus, it's not the aurora borealis or a meteor, it's not an aircraft that we can name, then we are talking something very incredible.
If these mysterious craft are being piloted by an alien civilization, what is their mission? Why Earth? And why now? There are growing numbers of people, now in the thousands, who believe that they've been abducted, manipulated, then released by aliens. It sounds ridiculous until you hear their stories.
I looked up in my rearview mirror, and lights were coming down out of the sky.
I walked out to the edge of the water, and I noticed this huge, shining thing.
I was so terrified looking into these big black eyes and these little creatures. I was thinking I could just raise my fist and crush his head. And exactly at that moment, I became paralyzed.
The visions often come during sleep. Nightmares about being abducted, probed, and prodded by aliens who have sinister motives. Hundreds of people have come forward to talk about their disturbing experiences and admit that they think their nightmares are real. Experts believe that there are thousands, perhaps even millions more just like them, who are too afraid to talk.
We have hundreds and thousands of people who are coming forward and saying that the abduction phenomenon has happened to them, that they've experienced it, and basically they say the same thing as everybody else has said, and until recently, there was no possibility that they could have picked up these stories in the media.
Since she was a baby, commercial photographer Kim Carlsberg has been plagued by memories of abduction.
At 4:30 in the morning, I saw this image of these four beings just move through this wall. They just, like it wasn't there. And they came over to me, two at my feet, two at my head, and they started to lift me up to the ceiling.
Bud Hopkins has been researching alien abduction reports for 26 years and is a firm believer.
I'm the first to admit that all this sounds outrageous. It all sounds just crazy, and yet the evidence is there behind it.
Particular problems could adequately be explained by the condition narcolepsy. This is a disorder characterized by hypnagogic hallucinations and hallucinations that occur at sleep onset, which can be very vivid and include the feeling of other people being present in the room or a sensation of levitation. Patients will actually describe saying that they are looking down onto their body.
I have two people that I've never met describing this exact same examination of their head being opened up, something being done to their brain, and being put back together again.
They opened my back. I knew my back was open because I could feel. It was almost as though a slit had been drawn down my back and across to the side, and they had opened a flap of flesh and tissue.
Whether the reports come from adults or children, men or women, most of them follow similar patterns.
There's a bright light that shines in the room. The abductee sees it. He hears a noise outside.
They're not interested in your mate, they're interested in you. So what they do is they render the person that you're with unconscious.
She goes up a beam of light with the alien into a hovering craft. If anyone goes into the room at that point, there's no one in the room. She's not in bed, in other words. A person is literally missing.
You find yourself on a table and these creatures around you with instruments, and you have no idea what they're doing, and they don't tell you.
The focus of the entire enterprise seems to me to be unmistakably on reproductive issues.
90% of reported abductions involve descriptions of what experts call gray aliens, extraterrestrial creatures with oversized heads and dark almond-shaped protruding eyes. Less common are insect-like or reptilian creatures.
The reptilian type has bothered a lot of people. It seems to be quite hostile and intrusive, often has claw-like hands, and I know there's one case where claw marks were photographed on the back of a woman.
There's one being in particular that I always recognize, and he's not a gray. He's taller, he's thinner, he's got a bigger head, he's got bigger eyes. His limbs are very praying mantis-like. I remember being on a table with my head turned away, not wanting to look at this creature. And then when I looked at him, I just recognized him as the one that I hated.
In a few cases, subjects claim to see hybrids, creatures who are half human, half alien. Some abductees believe they have been crossbred with aliens to create these hybrids.
A very important part of the abduction phenomenon is that there are reproductive procedures carried out upon them.
I've been shown children. I've been shown babies. I've been asked to hold children and babies. I've been asked to give these children affection. And these children aren't alien children, and they're not human children. They're somewhere in between.
I had a woman who had been to the doctor, had an ultrasound done. Her husband was there. Everyone observed at 3 months a healthy fetus. The next day she wakes up screaming they took it. Is so upset her husband takes her back to the doctor. He does a pregnancy test, finds out she's no longer pregnant. They do a D&C, there's nothing there.
The most humiliating thing that happened to me is they put a cylindrical sort of thing over my genitals, and it made me have an orgasm in a second. And I really feel like I'm one of those few men who knows what a woman feels like when she's raped.
I've been on a table, and I've seen something removed from my body that I will call a fetus, a baby. It was so small I couldn't believe that it could live on its own. I remember putting my finger in the arch of its foot. I was afraid to look at the face. I was afraid to see what it looked like.
There seems to be an enormous interest in the emotional side of this, too, on the part of the aliens. They want us to hold these odd little children, these babies. They want to see how a mother will hold in love a child, things which to us are instinctive.
The abduction phenomenon begins usually in infancy or at least by the age of 2, 3, or 4. It continues all through childhood, all through maturity, and into old age as well.
I have many cases where the person is taken as a child, usually what we refer to as the bedroom visitation.
I was laying in bed, I opened my eyes, and here's a little gray standing there looking at me. And all I could really remember were those dark eyes.
That little person, as he or she grows to adulthood, will be abducted over a period of time at irregular intervals.
Let us assume that this is all being made up, that this is internally generated, that there is no abduction phenomenon. If that's the case, then we have discovered something of enormous importance.
What are the repercussions of thousands of people running around thinking they're crazy, feeling crazy, being crazy, because they have no way to understand what's happening?
Psychiatrists and psychologists who are dealing with these people are the first to say, something happened to this person. This is not a fantasy. This is not something the person cooked up. This was an event in that person's life which was truly upsetting.
These experiences are not pleasant experiences. This is not something I'm happy happened to me. There's a part of me that would love to find the answer, that it was something else.
One of the most important and controversial UFO sightings in U.S. history occurred in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, 1969. To this day, many researchers who've investigated this sighting believe it is a model for how our government maintains secrecy and disseminates disinformation about UFO sightings.
Kecksburg used to be just like a lot of other small villages in western Pennsylvania. But in 1965, Kecksburg lost its anonymity when it became one of the world's most famous UFO landing sites.
I happened to look up in the sky and I seen this red fireball.
It sure wasn't a meteor, because I've seen them fall before. I've never seen any of them with blue lights on.
And it looked like it made a turn and come back again. And when it come back, it seemed like it went down.
It was December 9th, 1965, a night that many townspeople will never forget.
Hey, Dave! Thanks for being here.
And I started down through the woods up to where it was at.
There was no wings. There was no tail section. There was no motors. There was no windows. There was no doors. It was big enough for a grown person to stand up in.
It had like Egyptian writing, like backwards writing on it.
Stars and circles and dashes and lines and things like that.
It looked like an acorn.
It was really weird.
Some claim the UFO wasn't the only thing to arrive that night.
It wasn't too much longer. Down through the woods come two gentlemen. The one gentleman, very ramrod straight, very authoritative voice, crew-cut hair. I mean, he just reeked of military. He looked at the object and looked at us. He says, all right, this is now a restricted area. You are all ordered out of here.
Some military people come to the house and just said they'd like to use the phone. They sort of took the house over.
We started talking among ourselves, what's going on? About that time, up here on the road, comes a big flatbed truck in.
The flatbed went down and empty, and it come back out with something on the back of it covered up, about the size of a Volkswagen.
That truck was hell-bent for leather, and if you'd have walked out on that road, you'd have still been.
Dave, I'm still looking for the movie, but it's not available yet.
And that began the real mystery of this whole thing.
27 years later, what happened down there
Both
in that woods,
videos,
surrounded by
both movies
fields?
are still not available
Anything
yet,
happened
brother.
down there at all is still a matter of bitter controversy.
You've got this town split into two groups. You got the believers and the non-believers.
There's been some friendship lost.
See, man,
it's foolish as far as I'm concerned.
I have a brother-in-law that he hasn't spoken to me for 2 years and said that I lied about everything, that I never lied about a thing.
You got neighbors and neighbors that has known each other all their life. Now they don't want to talk because one believes it and one don't believe it.
Just as the town is divided, so too are experts who have researched what really happened in Kecksburg. Planetary expert Robert Young believes that some citizens may have perpetrated a hoax. He claims the UFO was merely a meteor known to have passed over Ontario and several northern states that evening.
Virtually all of the accounts can be explained by people having looked toward and seeing the Ontario meteor. How about the accounts, though, of the military that turned out in large numbers, kept people away from going down there, a truck that went down into the area and came out? You got eyewitnesses that say, this happened. Right. I understand. I have written, signed eyewitness accounts from 61 local people
who say that there was nothing crashed here or was recovered. There was no military occupation.
A lot of people probably think you're the government.
Well, sure, yeah, but I'm not.
I don't know how some people can say that nothing ever happened. There was so many people that saw things that night. Something had to happen.
I know what I saw, and I'm not going to deny it. They can tell me I'm lying, but I know that I've seen the military in my house that night.
Freedom of Information Act states there was 212 military personnel here that night.
Sightings attempted to speak with the Kecksburg residents who deny anything extraterrestrial ever happened here, but they all refused our invitation to talk. Even the landowner whose property was the alleged crash site remained silent.
I think the government bought them off, or threatened them with something that got them scared half to wits.
Ironically, their refusal to talk has only deepened the controversy. UFO researcher Stan Gordon heard about the Kecksburg incident on the radio the night it allegedly happened in 1965. He's been investigating the sighting ever since.
So much of what we know about the case now, we've learned since about 1987, with the fact that now we have at least 4 different eyewitnesses who apparently saw the object on the ground at Kecksburg. The fact that there are dozens of people independent of each other who don't even know each other yet, who have given us detailed information about what they experienced and saw that night. And they're giving us confirming information that has not been published yet.
The skeptics, and these include the people who own the land and some very substantial citizens of Kecksburg, think that this whole thing is loony. Why do they feel so strongly the other way?
Could be that some of these people were in the wrong place at that time. They were in a position where they didn't see what was going on. And if you see the geography of the area and where the majority of people were that night, they could not have seen the military activity that was happening on the land on the other side of the area down there.
Do you have any hard evidence at all that what went down in the woods near Kecksburg was something other than a meteor, or was anything at all?
Unfortunately not. As in so many of these cases, you have to go by the eyewitness accounts. And in this case, the eyewitness accounts are very, very strong. And again, unfortunately, we don't have that type of information. If this was the case, whether it be a space probe or in other UFO cases, sure, if we had the physical hardware, the mystery would be over.
What do you think it is?
What I think it is, at this point, and again, this is not conclusive, at this point, the weight of evidence would point in the direction that this may have been a Soviet space probe.
If the object were proven to be a Soviet space probe, then many questions would be answered. If a Soviet device landed in Kecksburg, the government would have been required by international treaty to recover and return immediately any space debris to the country of origin. But retired Army Sergeant Clifford Stone doesn't believe the Soviet probe theory.
If this was of Soviet origin in 1965, the State Department would have released documentation to me under their Moondust files. To date, none of that information has been forth.
Clifford Stone collects government documents about space debris recovery operations, like Project Moondust and Project Blue Fly. He began his investigations in 1965, when, as an Army sergeant, he witnessed a top-secret delivery to Lockbourne Air Force Base, about 200 miles from Kecksburg.
I noticed that on the back of the vehicle, it had something that was covered by a tarp. It was about 10 to 12 foot at the base, 12 foot tall. It looked like a chocolate drop. When my friend told me that every question I ever had about UFOs was under that canvas, I was mystified.
Since that time, Stone has repeatedly attempted to obtain information from the government regarding that object. Each time, the government's response has been the same.
They have taken the stance, by direction of the President of the United States, we may neither confirm nor deny the existence or non-existence of any information that all involve the recovery of unknowns.
Kecksburg remains a town divided. The only thing on which believers and non-believers can agree is that all they want to know once and for all is what really happened on December 9th, 1965. What would you like to see happen next?
It's time now, after 27 years, that the public has the right to know the true facts, regardless of what the object was or what really occurred. Something came down. From numerous eyewitness accounts, there was a lot of military activity into the small village. Then an object was located, that it was recovered, it was transported away for study. What was the object, and why after 27 years haven't they revealed what really was found?
Thank you.
Until authenticated debris is collected and publicly displayed, the validity of the UFO phenomenon rests entirely with the credibility of its eyewitnesses. Ufologists know this and have spent many years collecting sightings reports from the most credible eyewitnesses of all, military pilots. Unfortunately, these pilot reports remain unconfirmed because military personnel in this country refuse to talk on the record. But in Russia, one former Soviet pilot is talking. In 1991, a pilot in Russia came forward and told of a frightening UFO encounter. Risking ridicule, Maxim Chervakov was determined to tell what he maintains is the true story of his bizarre experience. At 19, Chervakov was one of the rising stars in the Soviet Military Flight Academy and became the Russian equivalent of a top. His flying record was impeccable until August 1991. Then, on 2 separate occasions, he had strange mechanical malfunctions in his jet aircraft. On one occasion, he was forced to eject. An investigation of that incident concluded that Chervakov had acted calmly and rationally. But 12 days later, a third incident would change Chervakov's life forever.
28th August, second shift. I made 2 flights with my commander, and third flight I made on my own. I gained an altitude of 3,900 meters. Then suddenly, I saw a ball in front of me, about 20 degrees to the right.
He watched the object for several seconds. Then, as it came toward him, Chervakov tried to radio the base. The light from the UFO was blinding.
A sense of unexplainable fear came over me. On the back of my head, I began experiencing warmth. I felt as if someone was present and watching me. My movements were under control, controlled by someone other than me.
Chervakov claims the reddish-yellow object started maneuvering around the aircraft. For several minutes, it kept up with the jet's airspeed and mimicked its movements. During that time, Chervakov was unable to communicate with his base commander. The radio emitted only a squealing sound.
Pilot Chervakov's description of the UFO moving relative to his own airplane is really quite common.
Dr. Richard Haynes has documented over 3,000 pilot sightings of UFOs.
I have thousands and thousands of cases of pilots in daylight encounters with structured objects, in the sense of having 3-dimensional mass, in the sense of having aerodynamic kinds of flight behavior relative to the aircraft. And so what he describes here fits in very nicely to what I have from hundreds of other pilots around the world.
In rapid-fire succession, the generator in Chervakov's jet failed. The instruments indicated a fire on board, and the cockpit filled with smoke. The base commander ordered Chervakov to eject.
I began arguing with the commander because the plane was still above the residential area. My altitude began to drop rapidly. I had to pull the plane out of a nosedive. At the altitude of 1,000 meters, I finally cleared the residential area and I ejected. 4 seconds later, the plane exploded.
Chervakov landed safely in a field and was rescued an hour later by a military helicopter. While officials combed the wreckage of the jet, Chervakov was handled at a military hospital. An intensive 3-day interrogation followed.
The interrogation was conducted with a sense of total distrust toward me. Right from the start, they told me that the first, the second, and now the third incident is all your own doing.
Chervakov was also interrogated by the KGB, who did not believe his story and charged him with insubordination and sabotage under the International Terrorism Act. Chervakov claims the KGB threatened that if he did not tell the truth, he would be brought to trial, found guilty of terrorism, and shot by a firing squad.
In English.
Vladimir Azhaja heads the Russian Center for the Study of UFOs, housed in the Ministry of the Interior in Moscow. Dr. Azhaja is considered one of the world's foremost experts on UFO phenomena and has studied Chervakov's case.
We concluded that Maxim has a normal, healthy psyche and is not inclined to fantasies.
Retired Major General Albert Stubblebine is a former commanding general of U.S. Army intelligence. He witnessed and documented a hypnosis session conducted with Chervakov by an American psychiatrist.
As she was taking him into the trance, he changed from this terrorized, fear-ridden kid
Yeah, Dave, I'm okay, buddy. Well, I'm
sitting in the cockpit,
with my family,
sitting in
you
the
know.
seat, sitting with the controls, relating what was going on. There was a change in the individual.
Anybody can fabricate.
I really wish you a good day, Dave.
Was he fabricating?
Thank you so much for being here.
A person who, in that situation, was not fabricating. Whatever it was that he was saying, he truly believed had happened to him. Maxime really believed he had not done anything wrong, in fact had done the right thing, and desperately wanted this sorted out.
Although affidavits to that effect were presented at his court-martial hearing, the court still blamed Cherbakov for the destruction of his aircraft. But the military prosecutor admits that some of the evidence of Cherbakov's innocence was very convincing.
From the beginning, I had doubts about the truthfulness of Cherbakov's statement. But after questioning his mother, his comrades, and his superiors, I became convinced that Cherbakov had an encounter with a UFO.
In January 1992, the case against Maxim Cherbakov was dropped. But despite this vindication, he was not welcomed back into the military.
There is no training for pilots to deal with such encounters. The older pilots told me that a lot of encounters happen, but they don't speak about them. I feel that I'm missing something from my soul that I want very much. My love for the planes and flying has remained and will continue to remain.
Did Maxim Cherbakov see a UFO? We may never know the answer, but one thing is clear. Maxim Cherbakov ejected only after he saw that his jet would avoid populated areas below. Many in Russia suggested that Cherbakov should be awarded a medal for heroism. The United States Air Force admits that between 1952 and 1969 they conducted a study codenamed Project Blue Book. Its purpose was to determine if UFOs posed a real threat to the American people. Project Blue Book concluded they did not, and since 1969, the Pentagon has denied participating in any other UFO study. But ufologists believe this is a lie. They point to evidence of a monumental conspiracy designed to hide what the government knows and when it knew it.
Our government has flat out lied to us for 40 years or more. They've threatened people and intimidated people. They've spied on UFO groups, infiltrated UFO groups, spied on researchers, compiled dossiers. Their responses bordered on paranoia.
In 1988, reporter George Knapp of Las Vegas CBS television station KLAS began investigating the U.S. government's involvement with UFOs. He says he's found evidence proving a massive cover-up that began in 1947 and continues to this day.
The CIA says that it does not collect information on UFOs, and it hasn't since the 50s. There are reams of documents squeezed out of the CIA that indicate that they have on staff CIA UFO experts, agency personnel monitoring the situation on an ongoing basis. The FBI denied having any documents on UFOs in the 1970s, the early 1970s. 3 years later, they released 1,700 pages of information on UFOs, documents that they had. They lied.
But for UFO researchers, there is one persistent problem with those hundreds of released pages. Most, like this 1958 UFO memo to President Eisenhower, have been highly censored, essentially making them unreadable. Even this National Security Agency document explaining why UFO data should remain secret is, itself, almost entirely blacked out. Ironically, the official position of the U.S. government is that UFOs are not a threat to national security. Yet the agencies involved claim the censored information is vital to national security. From 1947 to 1969, the Air Force conducted Project Blue Book. Staffed with just 3 people, it studied 12,000 UFO sightings. All but 701 were explained to the military satisfaction. And the group that remained unexplained?
It does not contain any pattern of purpose or of consistency that we can relate with to any conceivable threat to the United States.
The Air Force closed Blue Book in 1969, but project critics weren't satisfied.
The first person to head it up, Captain Edward J. Rappelt, quit in disgust, wrote his own book and declared that there was something to UFOs, and the Project Blue Book was nothing more than a whitewash.
Other government officials, including the senator and 2 former presidents, have tried unsuccessfully to shed some light on the UFO phenomenon. Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater, President Gerald Ford, and President Jimmy Carter, who actually saw a UFO himself and filed a formal report, have all sought to have top-secret UFO information released to the public. All requests for that information were denied. Cover-up allegations aren't limited to the United States government either. Author Timothy Good claims that governments around the world are keeping UFO information top secret. And in his book, Above Top Secret, he claims only an elite few have access to that information.
Because so little of the research is made known to top ministers.
One country is bucking that trend. Belgium has acknowledged tracking unidentified, seemingly intelligently controlled craft in its airspace. Radar tapes released by the Air Force show an object jumping from 200 meters to 2,000 meters in 1 second, a distance of just over a mile. The Belgian Air Force has even put aside a plane to search for the objects. But the attitude of the United States remains very different. UFO experts claim our government is conducting top-secret research into UFOs in the middle of the Nevada desert. South of a dry lake bed known as Area 51 is a place known as S4, allegedly home to a super-secret government research facility. In the course of our investigation, we found a scientist who says he used to work there. Robert Lazar was shocked when he first discovered what it was he would be working on.
I got out of the bus, I was told to walk directly through the hangar, and immediately, even before entering the hangar, you can see the edge of a disc. This is your classic flying saucer, 2 inverted pie plates, if you wish, with a segmented larger area dome on top. Within minutes of that, I finally realized that this had nothing to do with something the government was producing. And it was quite shocking because everything inside was small. This was a full-size craft, 30, 35 feet in diameter, maybe 40. But you're looking at seats that are, 18 inches off the ground, obviously made, for something smaller. It certainly wasn't made for children to play in.
Lazar says there were 9 spaceships in all, and he claims to have seen one fly.
It began to lift off the ground almost silently. There was a hiss sound, like a corona discharge if you hear around high voltage systems, accompanied by a faint, it probably would have been brighter at night, a faint blue glow around the bottom. As the craft approached about 30 feet, 20 feet, something like that off the ground, that corona discharge disappeared, the sound stopped, and the craft stood there silently and slowly drifted over to the left and then to the right.
The government denies they're testing alien craft at S4. Lazar no longer works there and nowadays spends his time working on one of his hobbies, jet car racing. He alleges that after he went public, security officers at the base threatened his life. He also says that his employment and military service records have disappeared. Despite repeated requests, the government can't find them. The subcontractor who hired him for the job at S4 refuses to comment. But a few clues support Lazar's contention that he is a scientist and that he has worked for the government. This W-2 form indicates that he had been employed by the Department of Naval Intelligence. Before his stint at S4, Lazar claims to have worked at the Los Alamos National Laboratory. Los Alamos officials can't find any record of him, but his name does appear in a laboratory phone book from that time. Reporter George Knapp was able to track down a few of Lazar's colleagues who could confirm parts of his story. But when they talked to Knapp, something strange happened.
One after another had visits from government personnel who basically intimidated or told them to back off, followed them around. There didn't have to be any direct communication where an agent says, you keep talking to this guy, you're going to end up in a river. The message was very clear.
Since Lazar's story broke, Area 51 has become a hotbed for UFO sightings.
You see that? It just zipped to the left. See it again?
While our cameras were there, a bright light appeared in the night sky. Utterly silent, it seemed to float below the mountaintops. Analysis of our videotape proved inconclusive. Those who might know the answers aren't talking.
I've been covering organized crime in Las Vegas for 10 years, dealing with mob hitmen and mob informants, people who have been in the witness protection program. The fear that is generated by this UFO subject for people who really know about it far outweighs the kind of fear that the mob inspires. I mean, people are more afraid of our government than they are of organized crime.
Well, I am exactly sure of what I saw. I know what mainstream science is like. I know where physics stands. I know all of that. And this is an extraterrestrial craft. This technology is hundreds and hundreds of years in advance of us, and that's the end of that story.
The people we've heard from in this report believe that they have had close encounters of the first, second, third, even fourth kind. Skeptics charge that they're mistaken, that they're misinformed, or at the very worst, just plain crazy. But are we, the human race, so conceited as to believe that we are alone in the universe? Is it possible that in the infinite frontier of space, this speck of intelligent life we call Earth is the only one? For Sightings, I'm Tim White.
Essa pessoa aqui. Olha. Pronto, pessoas me disseram, o caralho, pegou aqui. Hey David, thank you so much for being here. Por agora. É basicamente é quase o mesmo.
Hey, good morning everyone, or good afternoon, good evening. Here is already noon. Today is the 1st of December. And I have a small video that I wish to show you. Yeah, it's about UFOs and all those kind of stuff. And
Hey, Sanjita!
all happens here in Portugal. Well, this is a channel, in Portuguese is the Mochila às Costas, Portuguese channel. Belongs to a few guys that travels around the world, and well, they have been in quite amazing places. Let me show you. Is this channel here, the Mochila às Costas. Well, these guys, they have a big channel. It's quite a nice channel, but I recommend you to subscribe. They go to lots of amazing places. And this whole video was recorded, let me try to show you, here on this place, Serra da Gordunha. Serra da Gordunha is a place very close. Well, it's not very far from Coimbra. Let me see if I can show you here on the distance from Coimbra, if my internet responded. Let me try to focus here on the. Oh, it's almost there. Well, I'm here. Serra da Gordunha is here. It's not very far, let's say, from Coimbra. And all this happens on this village. Castelnovo is a very historic village in Portugal, place in the Serra da Gordunha. It stands apart by its architectonic patrimony in granite, with a castle from the 12th century. The house of City Hall, with chamariz is a fountain, Barroco style, and Tourinho. It was a place they judge and sentence the people. Also has a wine cellar place, dig on the rock, and is also a village known by this food specialities. There are a lot of places here. I can try to put this in English. I don't know. Traduzir, translate. Como é que vou isto? Selecionar outro idioma. English. Translate it. Let me see if. Yeah, it's already translated. As you can see, Castelo Novo. You can check by yourself more information about this place, but is also known because of the UFO sightings that have been for a lot of years back showing up on that place, and there is a lot of documented facts about also the apparition of a lady, a saint. Well, I'm gonna try to put the video on. Let me see if I can place it. Okay, let's put it play. If this works. I'm sorry, so many people here at home and they...
Objeto, pronto, um objeto, não sei explicar o que era.
Eu tinha 3 pontos de luz forte, assim, esbranquipada.
Umas luzinhas lá dentro a brilhar, muito grande, redondo, assim como
Subtitles.
esquisita. Estava o fio debaixo da penha, e eu vi e isso embora. Mas o que é certo e verdade é que muita gente já presenciou.
Na encosta da mística Serra da Gardunha esconde-se uma aldeia que coabita com o paranormal.
Porque isso existe.
Oh, I didn't see burn. Hello, buddy.
Com suspeita de que há mais além do que conhecemos. E nesta região há muitos que têm certeza.
Não tenho tanta capacidade para dizer o que era aquilo, não é? Eu não sei o que era, mas que eu vi.
John P.
Olha, eu ia falar na merda.
Neste vídeo, por isso é que este louco.
Talking about shitty things.
Desde até aqui, morri pelas histórias documentadas e pelos testemunhos semelhantes, que há mais de 50 anos fazem deste lugar a aldeia com mais avistamentos de OVNIs de Portugal.
Yeah, as you can see, I recommend to visit this place, not just for the UFOs, but also for the beauty of the place.
Acabar não, I know.
John P., you have to make a
Pois, eu vou passar para a frente.
to this place.
O que é isto? Oh, this one, okay. Yep. No. Right on the edge.
Thank you.
Hey, Willie.
Thanks,
Thanks, buddy.
I know. Sorry, Rose, I'm too far from the phone. Is that next to the moon or is it in the moon?
Oh, fuck it.
Yeah.
Thumbs up, guys.
Oh. Good stuff. Hã? Olha, apagou. Lights out. Something was there. Now I got something. As the moon is not moving, that the down is moving more to the right. Something was there. And I got something. I know. Sorry, Rose, I'm not Not too far from the phone. Is it next to the moon or is it in the moon? Olha pra ver. That's all. Something was there. Now I've got something. Doesn't mean it's not moving. Down to the right. Something was there. Got something.
Mass UFO sightings, where large groups of individuals supposedly witness the same unexplainable event, are an uncommon, though not unheard of, occurrence. In such cases, the abundance of eyewitness testimonials often lends credence to the claims made. Whether this credence is deserved is not immediately clear, however, and a close examination of even the most seemingly unassailable claims is worthwhile. The Westall School and Ariel School sightings represent two extremes of this particular genre. Separated by 10,000 miles and almost 30 years, somewhat similar events took place, and yet the character of each is utterly different. April 6, 1966 was a beautiful autumn morning in the outskirts of the Australian city of Melbourne, in an area known as Clayton South. 2 days before Good Friday, the upcoming Easter holiday break was on the forefront of everyone's mind at the neighboring schools of Westall High and Westall State, a primary school. At the high school, two groups of students ranging in age from 11 to 16 years were undertaking a physical education class on the large sports oval, one of the groups playing cricket, the other football. At about 10:15, an unidentified student suddenly stopped what he was doing and called everyone's attention to an object slowly moving through the sky at about 500 to 600 meters distance. Reports made by witnesses, including students Maryland Eastwood and Colin Kelly, described the object as more or less disc-shaped and silvery or silvery green in color, generating, as student Joy Tighe described in a contemporary report, a whirring noise. After a time, a minor panic ensued as the perceived enormity of the occasion overtook the onlookers. Many of the students stared in wonderment, while others bolted from the field in hopes of finding shelter inside one of the campus buildings. Unable to continue with instruction, physical education teachers who were on duty at the time urged the remaining students to follow in kind and leave the field for their own safety. Meanwhile, science teacher Andrew Greenwood nearly jumped out of his shoes when an unnamed female student burst into his class, shouting something to the effect of, "There's flying saucers outside." Though the girl quickly left, the class's attention was now understandably riveted to the windows, much to the teacher's consternation, as his lessons were not yet complete and the recess bell was not due to ring for another 5 to 10 minutes. In a later interview with University of Arizona physicist James McDonald, Greenwood noted that he didn't take the girl's exclamation seriously, as he knew her to be somewhat excitable. His immediate impression was that it was in fact a prank designed to test his commitment to class discipline. In another room, Graham Simons, a chemistry student in a class taught by Barbara Robin, recalled gazing out over the grounds behind the school while working on an experiment, only to see something in the sky he didn't recognize. Still on the oval, students Colin Kelly and Brendan Dixon watched as the strange object descended to about 9 to 10 meters off the ground, hovered momentarily, then rose straight up and continued over a series of electrical lines and behind a copse of pine trees located in a nearby nature preserve known as the Grange. A few moments after the initial sighting, several classes, along with Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Robbins, and English teacher Claude Miller, hurried outdoors, the chemistry teacher having the presence of mind to grab a camera and start taking several exposures, though it's unclear whether these were of the mounting chaos on the school grounds or of the UFO in question. Graham Simons later likened the scene to a herd of zebra escaping a lion, and fellow student Jeff Holland recounted what he described as a surging mob. Clearly, word of the unusual sight had gotten around. On a small truck farm located between the high school and the Grange, Westall alumnus Paul Smith was pulling carrots with his boss in preparation for market. Both men heard the commotion and subsequently became aware of the strange object in the sky behind them. Quote, "We stood looking at it for several minutes. A few moments later, the children came over from the high school and they noticed us. It took a while to make up their minds that they would come onto our private property. They ran straight over across the market cart." Unquote. Indeed, though hesitant, as school was still in session and neither the truck farm nor the Grange were public land, many of the students, including Graham Simons, Terry Peck, Jacqueline Argent, and a girl named Tanya, jumped over the low fence running along the southern border of the Westall High campus, hoping to see the object close up, as it was assumed to have landed while out of view behind the trees. It was later claimed by nebulous sources that Tanya, along with possibly another student, had fainted upon arrival at the landing site. Later, after being revived and returning to campus, it was claimed by some that Tanya suffered screaming convulsions so severe she was quickly put into an ambulance and whisked off, never to return. A notably curious account is given by Victor Zakruzny, who had been a Form 2 student at Westall High, equivalent to an 8th grader in the American school system. Zakruzny was adamant 2 objects had landed in the Grange, and that he and about a dozen students, in a different group from those who had jumped the low fence, had in fact closely approached both of them. Zakruzny had gotten close enough to one of the objects to actually contemplate placing a hand onto its surface, though he declined, considering the object seems to be radiating a great deal of heat. Whether the young Zakruzny saw something or not, student Terry Peck arrived with her companions to find a large circular patch of grass, crushed and flattened as if by a great rotating weight. Peck described looking up almost at once to see a saucer-shaped object, quote, turn side on and just disappear into thin air, unquote. While the students were in the Grange, a young man who was later identified as Sean Matthews, and whose family had leased the land for the adjustment of horses, approached the group to inform them they were trespassing, though the students told Matthews of a flying saucer and indicated the anomalous spot on the ground. He seemed completely disinterested and only grew more belligerent, demanding they vacate at once. Back on the school campus, Mr. Greenwood and student Jeff Holland watched several light aircraft, possibly Cessnas, come into view and cluster around the UFO. Greenwood opined that the aircraft seemed to be playing a game of cat and mouse with a mysterious object. Holland elaborated further in an interview with the Clayton Calendar. Quote, as the aircraft approached, the thing tilted on about a 45-degree angle and started to move into the distance, gradually gaining height. The planes increased their speed and began to follow it, but the object streaked away, leaving the planes far, far behind. The planes turned back, and we all stood hoping it would return, but it didn't, so we all went into school 15 minutes later, unquote. Consider accurate. One numbers to have also encountered a sizable group already in the Grange, hopelessly confusing any possible timeline. This isn't to say Mr. Zakruzny is being untruthful, but his recollections may be faulty or inadvertently conflated with other unrelated memories. The fact that one crucial detail of his account is probably inaccurate, that he was at the landing site before it apart from some of his classmates, calls into serious doubt the other details offered by him, including description and sketches of the object's size and appearance. But other students who entered the Grange did at least note a flattened circular patch of grass before being ejected from the property by Sean Matthews. Contrary to the student's claims of his blasé attitude, Matthews indicated in a later interview with Melbourne newspaper The Sunday Age he had indeed seen a strange object enter and exit the trees. Quote, I saw the thing come across the horizon and drop down behind the trees and saw it leave again, unquote. Estimating it to be about the size of 2 family cars, Matthews went further to say, quote, "It was silvery, but it had a sort of purple hue to it. Very bright, but not bright enough that you couldn't look at it," unquote. Why Matthews did not call attention to these facts and corroborate the student's admittedly outlandish story is somewhat puzzling, and Matthews himself offers no explanation. It is possible, though, that once the object left the range, Matthews prioritized the trespassers as the most immediate problem, and thus refrained from fueling their curiosity and encouraging further encroachment onto his family's property. If students, such as Terry Peck, were correct, and there was some sort of circle formed in the tall grass, it should be noted that it was not permanent, and was not again mentioned by anyone apart from one-off recollections, decades after the story had become public knowledge. However, this doesn't mean the circle didn't exist. It is quite likely a circle or roughly circular patch of crushed grass could have been at the site, but since no credible account positively connects a landed craft with such, its association should be seen as spurious at best. As mentioned, Mr. Greenwood and Mr. Miller also jumped to the southern fence to investigate. Greenwood had heard some of the children had found what he colloquially termed a UFO nest and wanted to see for himself. Quote, "We tried to see what we could find. There were reports from several groups of children later on that they'd seen one of those typical nests. It would have been the perfect area to see one in, lots of long grass. But I didn't see one myself, though I looked around for quite a while." Unquote. Were the two men simply in a less suggestive frame of mind, or were they simply looking in the wrong spot? And what of the mysterious and eerie fate of the witness known as Tanya? Because of the ephemeral nature of her part in the overall narrative and the difficulty in locating her since the events in 1966, indeed Greenwood himself never even mentions her in any accounting. It has been suggested by some investigators that her very existence is in doubt, but such a conclusion would necessitate either gross deception or delusion by classmates such as Jacqueline Argent, who are absolutely adamant about her participation. It could be that Tanya was a student as well as a UFO witness, and that her later departure from the school grounds may have been an unconnected occurrence. This theory is supported by a statement made by former student Lance Brown. Quote, "In that 2-month period I had been at school, Tanya had been quite notorious to say the least, but when she vanished I didn't relate it to the UFO, more her wild ways." Unquote. No one, apart from Victor Zakruzny, ever mentioned seeing a landed craft, grounded balloon, or spent parachute. Others, such as Terry Peck, claimed to have seen a circle in the grass and a strange object in the sky directly above, a strong implication that the two were related. If the UFO was in fact a downed highball balloon or parachute from an associated flight, one would expect the students would find it, as by all accounts they had arrived on the scene a considerable amount of time before any ground crew could secure the area. It is conceivable a partially deflated balloon might be lifted back up off the ground by a small gust of wind, but it is very unlikely it would have had enough buoyancy to quickly rise above the treetops and make the kind of rapid departure as that reported by Greenwood and students Jeff Holland and Brendan Dixon. That a total of 4 to 6 aircraft were seen in the area is an interesting and perhaps telling detail. A chase plane was a vital component of highball missions, without which recovery of sensitive hardware and telemetry would have been very difficult. Granted, there would have been no need for as many aircraft as was reported, but considering the normally high volume of air traffic in the region, having other unassociated planes in the sky at the time would not be much of a stretch. But if the UFO was in fact a parachute from a highball balloon, why wasn't any chase plane seen when the UFO first appeared? No aircraft were observed by witnesses until after the recess bell rang, a minimum of 5 to 10 minutes. Some reported the UFO had emitted a noise that could reasonably be described as a conventional aircraft engine, but the close proximity of Morabin Airport to the school would seem to suggest such sounds were a common occurrence. Why would so many not recognize the sound if that was indeed what it was? Considering the difficulty Greenwood had in making visual contact with the unknown object due to the lack of atmospheric contrast, it is very possible a single aircraft was in the air and went unnoticed for some time. Any noise created by said aircraft could have been erroneously associated with the UFO, as it was so commonplace that students and teachers normally tuned it out. A group of aircraft would seemingly give credence to the theory of a target drone and could possibly explain some of the object's movements if the lead aircraft was circling the area, waiting for the other aircraft to arrive on scene. Most light aircraft of the type later described by Holland, Greenwood, and others usually fly in excess of 100 knots, or about 200 kilometers per hour. And while a towed drogue can certainly exhibit darting, evasive behavior, that is the whole point of its use, some of the maneuvers described, particularly by Mr. Greenwood, are quite curious. For example, In his interview with James McDonald, Greenwood indicated the object hovered several times, accelerated rapidly, sometimes crossing as much as 30 degrees to one side or the other, moved toward and away from the gathered crowd, yet always maintaining a distance of at least 500 meters, and bobbed up and down. Though the object usually made rapid movements, there were times it seemed to drift. Of course, in Greenwood's case, these are details about something seen at least a year earlier. To have such memories be totally free of distortion would be more puzzling than the UFO itself. Stories of military cover-ups are by nature conspiratorial and often lead to conclusions of questionable veracity. Many times these stories are comprised of second or third-hand hearsay or of first-hand observation of something with a multitude of possible interpretations. The idea that any government's military complex would want to suppress any evidence regarding bona fide UFOs, that is, craft of a non-earthly origin, is actually quite reasonable when one considers the possible threats to national security and public safety. If a government had reason to believe that objects were inserting themselves into national airspace and affecting maneuvers far beyond the capabilities of current technology, it would not want to risk the widespread civil unrest that would result in such information becoming widely known. The deep-set confidence one has in their country's latest nuclear submarine would suffer somewhat if faced with a threat from a flying craft that can seemingly disobey the laws of physics. If some decidedly more down-to-earth activity were involved, such as an experimental aircraft or clandestine spying project, one would expect a similar air of secrecy, albeit for a totally different reason. If the American or Australian military were spying on the Soviets, such information would be kept under wraps to prevent the Soviets from finding out and concocting some form of countermeasure. Many highball balloon flights had at least partially secretive purposes. To have Barbara Robin's film seized would be a reasonable and most likely legal course of action. That her entire camera was taken is not really relevant. There is no way of knowing if the camera was simply returned to her at a later time. The fact that many students were ordered not to speak with the media is also understandable considering Headmaster Sambleby's stern and straightforward method of performing his job. Undoubtedly, he would quickly tire of disruptions to the school's learning environment. Clearly, Sambleby did not believe in, nor have any patience with, anyone who believed in UFOs. He would have likely viewed the entire affair as a distraction and an affront to his duties as headmaster. There is also no reason to doubt Jacqueline Argent's claim of being questioned in Sambleby's office, but the claim should be considered from the viewpoint of the two officials, as well as the understandably anxious girl. Could they have been simply trying to learn if Ms. Argent saw a downed secret balloon? The fact that she suggested she saw something she couldn't readily identify was likely enough to put them at ease. And in any case, the very fact that the Westall UFO sighting became such public knowledge immediately following the event speaks to any supposed cover-up as either hopelessly inept or entirely non-existent. Australian newspapers, such as the Dandenong Journal, and school periodicals, such as the Clayton Calendar, were not in any way hindered in publishing. Andrew Greenwood, the only teacher witness vocal on the subject, was not prevented from being interviewed by either physicist James McDonald only a year after the event, or by investigator James J. Kibble at a later time. And as late as 2008, Greenwood did claim to investigator Shane Ryan that a pair of uniformed men, presumably Royal Australian Air Force officers, visited his home a week after the event and threatened to spread unfounded rumors of him being an alcoholic if he spoke about the UFO. The fact that he made no mention of this threat 40 years earlier, when it was presumably fresh on his mind, seems very strange. No threat was ever carried out, and no salacious rumors ever materialized, despite giving prodigious amounts of information to McDonald, a man who had neither motivation nor intention to keep quiet. Could this be an indication of a fault in Greenwood's memory, or could it simply be an embellishment added at a later time? It is tempting to conclude the entire event was purposefully expunged, but there is no reason to believe this out of hand, as the Australian government is no more immune to the imperfections of bureaucracy than any other. A host of unrelated documents from the era are probably also missing for one reason or another, but since Basterfield and his team were not looking for those, their absence was not noted. It is also possible all Westall-related material was simply sent abroad for further scrutiny, to either the Ministry of Defense in England or the Blue Book offices in the Pentagon. Then again, if the Westall UFO was in fact something already known to authorities, perhaps they didn't even classify it as a UFO in the first place. Noting the close proximity of the Moorabbin airport, many skeptics and investigators have theorized an unknown experimental aircraft was responsible for the sighting. As pointed out by writer Brian Dunning, this seems unlikely in light of the limited nature of Australia's aircraft industry of the day. Most manufacturing was centered around the small civilian variety and not something high performance or futuristic, akin to the American skunk works. Could the United States have been testing something in an ally's airspace? With millions of square kilometers of Australian outback, one struggles to understand the sense in flying a super-secret aircraft near one of the continent's most populated cities. Throughout the years, more efforts have been made to throw light on a supposed cover-up than on the origins and nature of the Westall UFO itself, an odd and somewhat off-putting fact that perhaps says more about human nature than one would care to admit. Mistrust and paranoia seem to trump curiosity and wonder. Taken by themselves, each account of the UFO Westall sighting seems a probable case of misidentification. Neither weather balloons nor target droves are a common sight for the general population, certainly not for high schoolers, whom could be forgiven for not recognizing what they were looking at. But as a whole, such explanations seem to only generate more questions, most of which will likely go unanswered. Perhaps the students and teachers of Westall High School were a fortunate lot and caught a glimpse of a reality most of us miss during our busy lives. Or perhaps the tale is nothing more than a bubbling witch's brew of collective memory, a fleeting and uncertain thing in the best of times.
For millennia, people have spotted mysterious objects in the sky. Most witnesses are ordinary, sensible people, startled at what they see. Many now report their encounters to government officials who deny any knowledge of UFOs. Conspiracy? Cover-up? Or an ominous miscalculation of the power of the unexplained? 1980, 140 miles outside London on the east coast of England. Woodbridge and Brentwater's naval bases under the command of the United States Air Force. Together they formed the largest tactical fighter wing in the world. The two bases were separated by a 3-mile stretch of heavy woods known as Rendlesham Forest. The backdrop for one of the most investigated UFO sightings in history. This is what it looked like just after midnight on December 27th. Woodbridge security supervisor, Sergeant Jim Peniston, rushed to the East Gate, where sentries alerted him to strange lights.
My first thought on it was an aircraft downing, a possible aircraft crash. There was a color scheme of red, yellow, and some white light. That's the reaction they get with chemicals.
Peniston radioed back to the flight supervisor and was given permission to investigate. He and the sentries advanced into the darkness until they stumbled on a sight they could not explain.
The air, for example, had a feeling of electricity in it. My feelings at the time ran from confusion to disbelief. I could not understand for the life of me what this could be. The craft itself measured approximately 9 feet by 9 feet, triangular in shape. It had no cockpit, as far as I could tell. There was no windows, just this very highly shiny, black, glass-like material. And I think the most fascinating part of it, at least as far as I was concerned as the investigator, was the fact that this had identifiable inscription, symbols on the side of it.
Peniston says he approached the craft. It was warm when he touched it. Suddenly, it began to move, lifting up silently right before his eyes and disappearing into the night sky. Peniston claims he drew this sketch of the craft at a debriefing the next morning with the Deputy Base Commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt. The next night, Halt received word that the strange lights had returned.
Well, the base commander and I looked at each other quite in disbelief. And I said, well, we both agreed we needed to put this to bed.
Eager to debunk the entire affair, Halt collected a Geiger counter, night vision star scope, and a handheld tape recorder. Then, with a few men from the Disaster Preparedness Unit, he drove to the area where Peniston had seen the UFO. Soon, the portable lights they had brought mysteriously flickered and died. Halt, concerned for the safety of his men, ordered several of them back to the East Gate. With the rest of his unit, he walked into the forest checking radiation levels. He says they seemed unusually high. Suddenly, off in the distance, Halt spotted a glowing object. This is the actual recording Halt made of his UFO encounter that night.
Okay, we're looking at the thing, we're probably about 200 to 300 yards away. It looks like an eye winking at you. And the flash is so bright to the starscope that it almost burns your eye. There's no doubt about it. This is weird. There's something very, very strange.
And there we stood. Well, we didn't know quite what to think of that. But when we looked to the north, suddenly there were objects in the sky. And we watched this in awe. Suddenly the object came toward us at high speed. It moved directly toward us. I can't estimate the speed, but it moved very rapidly. Stop and send down a pencil-like beam at our feet. And just as fast as the beam appeared, it just clicked off, disappeared. I still have questions as to what happened. I really don't know what it was. I do know it was something strange, something that was controlled by some type of intelligence, and that's about all I really know.
2 weeks later, one-page memo sent to the British Ministry of Defense. The British government never responded to the memo, but word of the encounter spread. 3 years later, UFO researchers pressured the Air Force commander to release the document under the Freedom of Information Act.
Well, he released it. And the very next day, I got to meet BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, German TV, Japanese TV, every local radio station, and they were waiting on my doorstep at home and at the office. It was just unbelievable.
News of the Rendlesham incident also generated enormous interest from UFO researchers and skeptics. Here was a case with highly credible witnesses, trained Air Force personnel. Tucson astronomer and retired U.S. Air Force pilot James McGahey is a UFO skeptic who investigated Halt and Peniston's alleged encounter. McGahey insists Halt mistook the beams from a lighthouse for a spacecraft.
That object that was winking at him, which is on the tape, is clearly the lighthouse. Now he's looking at the lighthouse, I think, with a starlight scope. Now remember, here comes this beam of light. He's looking at this light with 100,000 times intensity. What it's going to do is it's going to burn out the image in the center, so it's going to become black. And that's what easily explains the beams and these other things.
When Halt's tape is played against the flashing from the lighthouse, this seems to be the case.
Right in this position here, straight ahead, in between the shredders again. Watch, straight ahead off my flash back there. Now, there it is. Hey, I see it too.
I can't explain that. I really don't know. I never gave it any thought. I do know that the whole time we were out there, we could see the lighthouse. And the lighthouse was about 35 or 40 degrees off to our right from where this whole thing took place.
Did area radar operators confirm the UFO? Halt says maybe.
They really didn't confirm they found anything. Although later I found out that when they reviewed the tapes, they did find some things on the tape.
If he has a radar report, I'd like to see it, because I investigated this and I couldn't find one.
Skeptics also suggest the Rendlesham UFO might have been a meteor, bright stars, or a Russian satellite that fell out of the sky that night.
To me, this is just a case of where a number of people saw some lights, got a little excited, thought about UFOs, and all of a sudden everything they see is a UFO. The first night, it was a combination of a satellite reentry, a meteor fireball, and a police car driving around in the woods. The second night, it turns out to be a lighthouse, some microwave antennas, and some stars in the sky.
We had a controlled landing. Apparently there was no crater. We also had a craft that was able to take back off with absolutely no sound and maneuver back through the tree line, rise over the trees, hover momentarily, and then take off at incredible speed. It's just totally ridiculous to even consider that it was a Russian satellite or a meteor. Impossible.
In 1991, believing serious questions were still unanswered, the British government finally responded to the Rendlesham incident. Nick Pope, its top UFO investigator, reopened the case.
I've always felt that Rendlesham Forest is a case which displays a lot of important factors all drawn together. You have a multiple witness event. Those witnesses are trained military observers. The Defense Radiological Protection Service had no explanation as to why the radiation readings taken by Colonel Hall's team were so high. Undoubtedly, something very strange.
Pope requested further investigation. The British government said no and closed the file. Perhaps in part due to this fact, Sergeant Penniston arrived at the site at approximately 1 a.m. and re-emerged from Rendlesham Forest after dawn, but can only account for less than an hour of his time. Skeptics question how Penniston could make such an historic discovery and yet not report back to the base for several hours.
What we had thought was apparently only maybe an hour's worth of investigation time turned out to be 4 hours. I got a feeling that it might have been the adrenaline. We were pumped up at that point in time.
What is it that Penniston says he saw and touched that night? To this day, he is perplexed by the entire incident.
Something that can sustain a controlled flight, something that has mass, that makes no sound, and something that can take off at incredible speeds back up into the atmosphere. Explain it. I can't.
Unknown forms in the sky surprise and alarm citizens below, sometimes causing governments to do battle with the unexplained. Belgium, the center of Europe, and the focus of one of the most famous UFO encounters in history. On the evening of November 15, 1989, police officer Francis Michelzik had completed a few hours of routine patrol in Anza Belgian village near the German border, when Michelzik says he looked up and became one of the first witnesses of the Belgian wave.
Nous avons observé une masse importante qui était dans le ciel.
We saw a large mass in the sky. 3 lights oriented downward, about 200 meters from our police van.
Cet objet ne faisait pas de bruit et il était immobile.
The object was silent and immobile. This object did not correspond in any way to anything we'd seen before.
À ce que nous avions déjà pu voir dans le passé.
2 weeks later, Dieter Plumens, a member of the Gendarmerie, the Belgian National Police Force, heard over his police radio fellow officers nearby reporting a strange object in the night sky.
At first, when we heard our colleagues talking to dispatching, we thought they were crazy.
Plumens requested permission to investigate, and when he reached the edge of town, he says he witnessed an astounding sight.
We stopped right in front of the nursing home, and there was an immense object over our heads. The object had 3 lights at its extremities and a blinking red light in the center. At a certain point, I saw a small object leave the large thing, an object which was also flashing, which came straight down and then turned and flew around the back of the nursing home. After that, the large object transformed itself into a single light, and we followed it toward Germany.
Belgian radio and TV soon were filled with reports of similar sightings, prompting hundreds of calls to the office of the top UFO research group in Belgium, known by its acronym SOBEPS. Over the next several months, researchers documented more than 800 so-called close encounters. SOBEPS eventually published 2 thick volumes.
Specific characteristics of the phenomenon were reported by many people. We have hundreds of reports of people who mentioned something below a distance of 100 meters.
Then, on March 30th, 1990, the Belgian wave story took a dramatic twist. Near midnight, several police officers called a NATO radar installation with reports of a UFO. Within an hour, that facility and a second radar station were both tracking an unknown flying object.
The chief of operations for the Belgian Air Force, Lieutenant Colonel Wilfred de Brouwer, ordered ground command to scramble a pair of F-16 fighter jets armed with missiles. A supersonic high-tech cat-and-mouse game ensued. The jet's radar locked on to their targets 9 times. But with each lock-on, the object drastically changed its position. After an hour, the F-16s lost contact and returned to base. For weeks, the encounter was kept under wraps. But Colonel de Brouwer felt compelled to share what he knew. During an interview with a reporter from one of Europe's most popular magazines, Paris Match, de Brouwer described what happened. The story stopped the presses. Within days, de Brouwer called a news conference and told reporters from around the world what he knew and what he didn't know. This is what the pilots saw on their radar. The UFO appears as a diamond in the center of the screen.
What these pilots detected was the normal flying envelope of an airplane. In other words, sometimes they had what we call lock-ons on a target, which gave a parameters varying from speeds between 150 knots till 990 knots. An acceleration which occurred in a few seconds. These speeds would be impossible to tolerate for a human being.
Colonel de Brouwer never suggested the mysterious flying craft was from outer space. He only said its speed and rate of acceleration were unexplained. Over the next few months, the sightings became more sporadic, and the Belgian wave came to an end. Did the skies over Belgium become craft? If not, what did thousands of people witness? Physical evidence is the key to proving the existence of UFOs. The Belgian wave, despite hundreds of credible eyewitnesses, has produced only one piece of convincing evidence. This photo, taken by a civilian bystander in the town of Petit Réchon. The photo was examined by former NASA scientist Richard Haynes, a specialist in vision, optics, and human perception.
My analysis of the Petit Réchon photograph suggests very strongly to me that the object that was photographed does not obey laws of physics as we know them. Second point I would make is it's not a forgery. And finally, I think that there may be some clues in this photograph having to do with propulsion and lift.
Belgian scientists and skeptics tried to calm what they considered the UFO hysteria of the Belgian wave. Institute at Belgium's prestigious University of Liège, Pierre Mega, decided to put the Petit Réchon photo to his test.
We tried to reproduce this photograph, and we produced this picture, which is well, very close to the original picture. So I think the only way to go ahead and to try to understand more is to do as we did, to analyze the witness report together with the photograph and to see if everything is consistent. And there are so many inconsistencies that it's very hard to believe it's a true picture.
I don't see how someone could recreate this down at almost the grain level of the film. It would take a Steven Spielberg kind of a capability to do this in a technical laboratory.
The most convincing evidence for the skeptic's position involved the radar lock. Belgium's Electronic War Center analyzed the radar tapes and found that the object descended below ground level at some points, a physical impossibility. The center concluded that all but one of the radar lock-ons were really caused by electromagnetic interference or unusual atmospheric conditions. Eventually, even SOBEPS agreed, but one major question remains unanswered and unexplained. Experts say that when ground-based and air-based radar track the same object simultaneously, the object is real. One of the lock-ons, A simultaneous tracking of the UFO by one of the F-16s and the ground radar station has never been explained.
If I remember, it's Lacan number 9, which has some very... And this characteristics doesn't fit with atmospherical explanation, not at all.
Thousands of people still wonder if what they saw came from another world. Others ask if that single perplexing radar report is a clue to civilizations in distant galaxies. Questions for those who find answers in the unexplained. For years, the U.S. government seriously investigated sightings of UFOs. Thousands of cases passed through the hands of military and other government agencies. Most of these cases had rational explanations. The rest remained classified as unexplained. "50-year-old Polish immigrant and amateur geologist Stephen Mahalik looked forward to his weekend getaway 90 miles east of his home in Winnipeg, Manitoba. This was Mahalik's favorite prospecting site. Around noon on May 20th, 1967, as he examined a quartz formation, Mahalik was distracted by some unruly geese. He looked up and was transfixed. He says he saw two cigar-shaped objects glowing red in the sky. The following is a recording Mahalik later made of what he saw next.
The size, was amazing. And here they're coming down. With speed, I just can't describe. Amazing speed.
Mahalik says one of them stopped, suddenly accelerated, then disappeared. The other landed about 50 yards away. He watched in awe.
I hear shh, and I hear a high-pitched whistle of running equipment. Speed. When the thing landed, it was of gray pink color. It's stainless steel and it was pink hot. And I can feel the breeze on my face that thing is hot outside. There was my notebook, there was my pencil, so I sketched it.
Mahalik claims it was round, about 40 feet long and about 10 feet high. His curiosity took hold and he approached the craft. He examined the outside of it, slowly touching the glowing skin with his gloved hand. It was fiery hot, nearly melting the palm of his rubber glove. Mahalik says the craft rotated, turning its grid-like exhaust vent toward him. The blast of hot gas from the vent knocked him to the ground, setting his shirt and undershirt on fire. The craft suddenly lifted off the ground, according to Mahalik, and soared straight up. Ground, dazed and in severe pain from burns to his chest and stomach. Mahalik says he wandered around for what seemed like hours before he managed to gather up his supplies. He found his way out of the woods, caught a bus, and later that night arrived back in Winnipeg. Still in pain, he rushed from the bus station to nearby Misericordia Hospital, where he was treated for first-degree burns. Mahalik claimed the blast from the craft had etched a grid-like pattern into his abdomen that matched the pattern on the exhaust vent. The next day, Sunday, he was spirited off to the St. Regis Hotel after convincing the managing editor of Winnipeg's highly regarded daily newspaper, the Winnipeg Tribune, that his extraordinary encounter was real.
At that time, I said, okay, as any newsman would have done, a piece of paper. I think that drawing has become the most famous UFO piece of evidence in the world today. He sat down, he drew it in front of me. I hid it. I talked to him. I called doctors. I called police. And I sure as hell didn't want the Winnipeg Free Press getting the story.
Monday's edition of the Tribune led with this headline: Mahalik soon became a sensation worldwide. What followed was one of the most intensely examined UFO cases on record. Over the next 2 years, Mahalik's burns kept recurring, and no one could explain why. He was examined by more than a dozen physicians in Canada and the United States, including doctors at the Mayo Clinic. An investigation by the Royal Canadian Air Force concluded that by Mr. Mahalik remain as unexplainable as to the source of the burn. The Mayo Clinic psychological report concluded that Mahalik was not prone to delusions, hallucinations, or any type of emotional disorder. Perhaps the most influential investigation was conducted under the auspices of the United States government. The chief investigator, physicist Roy Craig, is now retired and raises llamas on his Colorado ranch. His job was to examine UFO reports and find physical evidence.
We responded to the Falcon Lake report as soon as we could. Now, there's no value in seeing a landing site that somebody's had a chance to go back and prepare for me to look at. But if we could get back and find a landing site that had not been seen by anyone else or been altered by human beings, there may be something there that we could use as real evidence that he, comparable with the appearance of human beings on Earth.
2 weeks after the encounter, Craig flew to Winnipeg and joined Mahalik on his first return to the landing site.
He guided this on what he said was in circles, coming back to about where we started far at all. He was trying to give us the impression of leading us on a search for a site. And we all concluded that the site probably did not exist.
With no apparent physical evidence, Craig classified the case as without merit. The American investigation was over. University of Manitoba astronomer Chris Rutkowski, believing the government reports left many questions unanswered, launched his own investigation. In 1994, he published The Falcon Lake Case to respected Journal of UFO Studies.
The terrain around the site is very rugged, very rocky. The brush is very, very dense. The trees all look alike. The rocks all look alike. And to a person who's disoriented, not feeling very well, it might be very, very difficult to find the exact site after some period of time has elapsed.
Skeptics, disagreeing with Rutkowski, also do not believe that Mahalik would make physical contact with an extremely hot object he assumed was a UFO. But this does not surprise his son.
He is the kind of fellow that fear is not in his vocabulary. Not that he's a fearless man, but that when he sees something he doesn't understand, he doesn't fear it. He just chooses to understand it.
Skeptics wonder why no one else saw the craft.
I talked with the people who were in charge of managing the fire tower. It was manned at that time. And the people were absolutely certain that there was no way that two vehicles like he described, glowing as they were, could fly into that space and out again. There was no way that that could happen without their seeing it. My conclusion on that case is that all the evidence that I found pointed toward hoax rather than a real experience. And not even a skillful hoax, a very inept hoax.
Mahalik became bedridden and incapacitated in the 1980s. Was this hard-working and devoted family man capable of crafting such a hoax?
For my dad to fabricate something as large as this would require more than I think he had. More than he has. He's a simple man. He grew up and lived a very straight, hard life.
This was no con man. This was a man who later went down to Mayo. They couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure it out. The doctor I had there couldn't figure it out. I am not about to be taken by anybody. This guy didn't take me. This guy was legit.
Stephen Mahalik never wavered from his story. He believed he had encountered a UFO. Roy Craig and the U.S. government disagreed, but they never classified the case as solved. The official report lists Mahalik's sighting as unexplained. In the past, the U.S. government routinely took a keen interest in reports of UFOs. Now, it denies any investigative role, leaving only questions for witnesses of close encounters with the unexplained. On the night of March 8, 1994, something strange was sighted in the skies over Holland, Michigan, on the southeastern shore of Lake Michigan. Witnesses were startled and called police.
There were at least 4 lights, and they were all flashing like okay, they were the sequence. It was a kind of like a V.
There was like probably 4 or 5 lights, and they were all flashing right in a row from the top all the way down to the bottom.
The lights hovered over the outskirts of town near the home of Holly and Daryl Graves. Their 15-year-old son, Joey, was sitting in the living room watching TV.
Out of the corner of my eye, I saw light, and I looked out the window, and there was a round circle of light. I called my parents in, and they were sleeping. They didn't know what was going on, and my mom, she called 911 to get a cop or someone out here to look at it.
911.
Just wondering, have you heard anything about these lights that are flickering up here? It's different. I've never seen anything like it.
Okay, well, have somebody check it out.
It looked like a sphere. The lights were really weird because they changed, but they kind of faded into a different color, so it wasn't like regular lights. So it was kind of weird.
We watched it up to about a half hour, just slowly moving south. We were just in awe, I think, about the whole thing. There was no noise. It was very peaceful out. We just stood there and watched this object. At that moment, Officer Veldhaus pulled in the driveway.
Well, what I saw were 2 bright lights. Their movement was something that really caught my attention. Their speed accelerated, and then it slowed down again. And I decided to have our 911 dispatcher contact a radar operator in Muskegon, Michigan.
It was a clear night. It was about 10 p.m. I was alone on duty, and we had a call from the central dispatcher in Ottawa County, which is quite common for the police department to call us whenever they have any type of weather questions.
Weather Service, Muskegon. Hi, Muskegon. This is Ottawa County 911 calling. You getting anything weird down in the southern Ottawa County area?
Bouchon checked his radar for any images, what radar operators call returns.
I'm seeing 3 of those. They're very strong. These are huge returns. I've never seen anything like this. Not even when I'm doing storms. This is really weird. These are bigger than planes. They're about over center of Lake Michigan, 3 of them in a triangle.
What was extraordinary about this case was that radar apparently detected the object at the same time witnesses saw it. It is a level of confirmation rarely achieved in reported UFO sightings.
Airplanes look like they're moving. These were just sitting still. And then a few minutes later, they would disappear from one spot and show up somewhere else. I really didn't know what it was.
Strange lights in the night sky, moving at otherworldly speed. The image confirmed on a radar screen. Was this finally convincing evidence of a technology far beyond our own? Had alien spacecraft paid a visit to Holland, Michigan? There was no explanation for these sightings. A reporter for the Muskegon Chronicle, Michael Walsh, decided to investigate for himself. He too found the story remarkable.
We've had past articles where people have reported some strange phenomena, especially at this time of year. But not once did we ever have any dual confirmations, visual plus the radar.
Others began looking into the incident, fascinated by the radar confirmation. A professor of natural sciences and, at the same time, the editor of the Journal of UFO Studies, UFO researcher Michael Swords met with radar operator Jack Bouchon.
We went into the room. This young fellow really knew how to use the equipment. He would show us the difference between a hard count of something like an airliner and a soft response of something like a storm cloud, and it was obvious this was an extremely competent operator.
Skeptics point out that Bouchon was still a Weather Service intern at the time of the sighting. California engineer and skeptic Robert Schaefer thinks he can explain what the images really were.
The National Weather Service says that they track the number of objects over Lake Michigan. But, of course, not everything that turns up on radar is a solid object. Radar is subjected to mirage conditions of various kinds.
Schaefer believes that the sightings over the lake can be explained by a natural phenomenon, which usually happens over Lake Michigan in the spring. Warm air moves over the cold waters of the lake. The layer of cold air trapped beneath the layer of warm air creates a mirror effect in the sky by bending the light. This effect is called a temperature. One of the best-known investigators of UFO sightings, Philip J. Klass, is a technical journalist for Aviation Week in Space Technology and an expert on radar systems.
Ground radar, especially during temperature inversion conditions, the rays can be, instead of going straight out, they can be bent downwards, so where you get echoes from the ground.
We're trained to know the difference between temperature inversions and, for instance, precipitation, because they appear to be the same thing.
Klass says that since Bouchon was using old linear radar, not the newer Doppler radar, the images were probably atmospheric tricks.
It is a weather radar. It is not designed, especially, to detect metal objects or aircraft.
These returns were not only hard returns, but they showed up in this geometric pattern. And that when, say, the lead return would move out into Lake Michigan, the other two would stay behind. Then they would move to reform the triangle.
In fact, according to Muskegon Chronicle reporter Michael Walsh, most of the UFO witnesses did report strikingly similar patterns, shapes, and sizes.
I believe that each of them sincerely believed what they saw was something extraordinary. That's not to say that it's extraterrestrial or paranormal. It may very well be a very physical manifestation of something that we don't yet know about.
There is no consensus on what the UFOs over Holland, Michigan might have been. Skeptics point to a temperature inversion and its effect on both the lights in the sky and the radar on the ground. Witnesses, including a Weather Service radar operator, say they know they saw something real. But what was it?
I have no idea.
Personally, I'm not sure what I saw either.
Well, it was a UFO.
I was like in awe.
Do these eyewitness accounts and the radar confirmation merit further investigation? The government answered that question long ago. It says no, leaving this encounter one that may forever remain unexplained. Since the 1940s, believers in the unexplained have charged the U.S. government with conspiracy and cover-up. In the 1990s, those charges concentrated on a super-secret military base. In the heart of the desert, on the outskirts of Las Vegas, sits Nellis Air Force Base. 85 miles to the northwest is restricted Area 4808E, popularly known as Area 51, a jumble of mysterious hangars and runways in one of the most desolate places on Earth. Officially, it does not exist. Here, the U.S. tests its most exotic and advanced flying machines. The B-2 stealth bomber, the Blackbird, and the U-2. The Area 51 control tower identifies itself to area pilots only as Dreamland. There are no tours of Area 51. Instead, soldiers carry loaded machine guns with the authorization to use them. This base, shrouded in secrecy, has become for many the focus of the world's fascination with UFOs and its hope for contact with extraterrestrial life. UFO fans from all over the world drive the extraterrestrial highway, a lonely stretch of road that hugs the perimeter of the base to Mailbox Road. From this location, hundreds of UFO sightings have been reported. The vast majority have been explained as lights from the latest earthbound military technology. Some, however, are harder to identify. author Chuck Clark describes a remarkable craft he says he has seen many times.
It can go from a hover to several thousand miles an hour and back to a hover instantly. It can make very sharp right-angle turns and sharper than right-angle turns. I've seen 120-degree turns at high speed. It appears and disappears in mid-air, things that normal aircraft don't do.
UFO buffs contend the U.S. is testing an extraterrestrial craft at Area 51. But skeptics and UFO researchers agree that Area 51 is a UFO bust.
Almost all the sightings I hear about happen at night. And at night, you can't judge distance. You can't judge easily height in the sky. You can't judge speed. You can't judge actual performance. What I think is that there are no UFOs there. There are no UFOs being developed there. There's no UFO technology there.
Today, the government does not investigate UFO sightings, but for years, they were of vital interest. Beginning in 1948, the U.S. Air Force began what became known as Project Blue Book, the government's official UFO investigating arm. But both skeptics and UFO believers say Project Blue Book was half-hearted at best.
As time went on, and especially after the year of 1952, Blue Book's mission was changed. It was changed from being a somewhat serious look at unidentified flying objects to be basically a public relations office to try to diffuse emotionalism that was occurring in the American public about this. So, because this was a rather unsatisfying task to the people at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, they tried rather continuously from the mid-50s onward to get rid of this task.
In 1966, the U.S. Air Force commissioned the University of Colorado to conduct a thorough evaluation of the UFO phenomenon. The Condon Commission, named after its chairman, Dr. Edward Condon, began an 18-month investigation that ended in controversy.
Condon was an eminent physicist who ridiculed UFOs. He didn't take it seriously. He didn't spend time on the project. So the project went wrong because essentially from the top, not the scientific staff, but from the top, it was designed to help the Air Force get rid of the UFO problem. Well, how could it be designed to do that unless it said UFOs weren't important, weren't serious, and weren't a scientific problem?
Retired physicist and former investigator for the Condon Commission, Roy Craig, strongly supports the Commission's work.
To have some excellent reports come in with all sorts of proof that there was a strange vehicle there. And each bit of evidence that we checked out turned out to not be what it really sounded like to start with. And the evidence just plain got less and less. The more we learned about the case, the less mysterious it became.
The Commission considered whether UFOs were a threat to America's airspace, demanding military investigation.
There was no threats to our security, therefore they really didn't have to interject themselves in the investigation. They could leave this over to civilian agencies.
We don't have any national security defense against this anyway. And if these characters wanted to do something really overtly and catastrophically nefarious to us, this would probably gone on a long time ago.
The Condon Commission concluded that the government should stop investigating UFOs. As a result, in 1969, after 21 years and 15,000 UFO reports, including thousands classified as unexplained, the Air Force closed down Project Blue Book. But interest in UFOs remains high, despite the official position taken by the government. Was the government justified in terminating its UFO investigations? Most scientists and researchers, including astronomer Larry Chupik of Chicago's Adler Planetarium, say yes.
We don't find that the stories of aliens in some government hangar are true. We don't find pieces of spacecraft. I think when people look at the sky and they don't know what they're seeing, they tend to think of unusual things. And they've heard reports. So reports can stimulate them to make their mind see something they're not really seeing.
I don't reject the idea that there are flying saucers on Earth from elsewhere on the basis that has always been given that Our universe is so vast that they couldn't get here, and therefore they aren't here. We could not, because of our ignorance of our universe, say that other beings could not be here. I think it's arrogance to make that kind of statement on the basis of our current scientific knowledge. But that doesn't mean that I think they are here.
I don't believe we've been visited by extraterrestrials. I haven't seen the evidence for it yet. So we say the question is very much open and should be studied carefully.
For 30 years, I've been looking. I have yet to find a single piece of scientifically credible evidence to indicate that we have alien visitors. All we have are unexplained cases.
Have we been visited by extraterrestrials? Could the elusive evidence be found in a small number of mysterious reports that defy explanation?
Almost all of them turn out to be things we as scientists can identify, even though most people couldn't. Now, those last few are always questionable, because neither we nor the observers know what they are. These are the unexplained.
People will always stare at the sky and wonder about its mysterious images. They then will turn to their leaders for answers. The leaders turn to science. In the end, people have a choice. Accept the answers of science, or embrace what lies in the vast reaches of the unexplained.
E a Lúcia perguntou-lhe, e o que vem cá fazer? Vim cá dizer-lhe que venham aqui 6 meses seguidos. E só depois dos 6 meses é que lhe digo o que quero. No dia 13 de outubro, estamos lá.
A chuva era torrencial.
Bom, talvez fossem algumas 50.000 pessoas ao perto, não sei.
Quase nos convencemos que não haveria nada.
A Lúcia disse, joelho quem puder, Nossa Senhora vem.
Houve um grande momento de expectativa geral. De repente, a chuva cessou, as nuvens, que eram carregadíssimas, tornaram-se a pouco e pouco diáfanas.
E começou a falar, nós não ouvimos a voz de Nossa Senhora, só ouvimos a Lúcia.
E daí a momentos, olhávamos para o sol com mais facilidade do que se olha para a lua numa noite clara.
Via o sol escurecido. Não dava claridade.
Mas podemos mirá-lo tal e qual como miremos outra coisa qualquer. Não fazia mal nenhum à vista.
Eu vi-o assim. O disco tornou-se bronzeado.
Por outra ainda, a mudança de luz, a diversa de luz, o amarelo, o vermelho, o roxo.
Esfriamos os olhos para todo, vi tudo de cores. Tudo.
É que eu, depois, me parecia que só ouvi uma avenida qualquer, um som. Admiro.
E eu disse, então, sabe-se que lá tem um incenso. E é que são assim umas coisas de fumo, assim para cima. E eu pensando o quê? Tinha lá, havia lá incenso, não é?
E o sol começa naquela dança.
Quando apareceu o sol, às voltas, assim.
Do outro lado, o sol que rodava sobre si próprio.
Girava circularmente, mas não em volta do eixo. Se descrevendo assim, simples em volta de um eixo.
Quando o sol andava a desandar e...
Apareceu o sol às voltas como um disco a trabalhar. Parecia mesmo um espelho que vinha às voltas por ar abaixo e descer, a descer, a descer.
E dei-lhe a impressão que descia a ponto de me convencer-me que ficávamos esmagados pelo sol. E sem dar por isso, olho para mim e deixo enxuto. Olho para os outros, todos eles. Mas é que parecia uma cena de juízo final.
A minha mãe já estava aqui à espera e disse assim, ó filhos, agora não podemos julgar. Porque olha que lá no sol ninguém foi mexer. E o sol fez aquele fenómeno, foi um dedo de Deus que lá tocou, não foi nada que ninguém cá da terra. contou, tinham...
So let's see, my computer, let's put it here on this one. This here. What the fuck? No.
Hi everyone, welcome. This is the footage I've done yesterday, and I noticed that something fly by very fast in front of the camera. It was here, just before the ending. Something fly by very fast to the right. This is the editing I've done with some filters, some zoom, and take a look, leave your comments below. I also have a playlist of UAPs and UFOs. Take a look as well. Please share it, drop your comment, press like, and hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye-bye. Hi, good morning. Here I am. Hope it's recording. Well, I'm standing the place I usually record the sunset, and also the place is not the first time I catch a very fast moving object. Now they call it UFO. Before that it was the UFOs. Well, and it happens that yesterday after I shoot the sunset, and like I said, it's not the first time around here, on this area near my house. Yesterday I was shooting the sunset, and it was when only after I uploaded the video to YouTube, and I noticed that something moved very fast in front of the camera. Well, I'm decided to do some editing. What happened yesterday was, well, I was sitting on my car listening the live stream, not the live stream, but after the live stream, I never got the notification on time, but I was watching the latest Jacob Israel YouTube channel live stream. Well, I decided to record where was the trail, what was forming over there, and then I noticed that on those small portion of video that I've done, that something very fast has flying by in front of the camera. So the last time I catch up something was very similar, exactly more or less in the same area. This time I catch a little bit more frames. Now I was recording in 60 frames a second, so I have slowed down the video several times, and I have done a small video that I'm gonna join to this one. I'm gonna send it to Jacob. Maybe he wants to take a look. Of course, I'm going to share it with Mr. MEB and probably other channels, see if I can, well, maybe you can also give your opinion and please share it. I really enjoying this. So it's not the first time I captured one, so I got another one to join to the list of my playlist that you can take a look as well. So, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Share it, press the like, and give me your thoughts around this. Bye-bye. See you soon.
I do see that as, like Ben was saying, something, I don't know if you heard about this news. Here, take a look at this article. You're entering the sheep cave, which is a great thing. Now, I do see that as, like Ben was saying, something, I don't know if you heard about this news. Here, take a look at this article.
Well, as you can see, it's not a bug, it's not anything else. It's probably, and I'm quite sure there is a tic-tac object flying very fast in front of my camera. Okay, thank you so much. Give me your opinion. Please press the like and share it. Thank you so much for being here. Bye-bye. Be safe. Run out of battery. Run out of battery. What is it? It's fading. Run out of battery. Run out of battery. What is it? It's fading. What is it? It's fading.
OTA, 2 de novembro de 1982. Hora aproximada, 11 horas da manhã. Durante um voo de treino, o tenente Júlio Guerra, piloto da Força Aérea Portuguesa, entra subitamente em contacto com a torre de controle da base aérea da OTA. Assustado, relata estar na presença de um misterioso e inexplicável objeto. Que objeto seria aquele que o tenente Júlio Guerra observou na manhã de 2 de novembro de 1982?
Numa manhã luminosa de novembro de 1982, 3 pilotos da Força Aérea da base da OTA defrontaram-se com o desconhecido. Surpreendidos em uma manhã normal de trabalho, estes pilotos fizeram de facto uma das melhores e mais qualificadas descrições de um objeto que voava e não pôde ser identificado por eles. Mais acrescenta esta qualidade da observação pelo facto de ter sido uma observação feita em pleno dia, ao contrário de muitas situações noturnas onde naturalmente há mais equívocos, há mais dificuldade e mais ambiguidade na observação deste tipo de fenómenos. Vamos ver então o que se passou nessa manhã.
Naquela manhã, o tenente Júlio Guerra, um experiente piloto da Força Aérea Portuguesa, colocado na base aérea da OTA, preparou-se, como habitualmente, para efetuar mais um voo aos comandos de um avião Chipmunk, um pequeno monomotor de 2 lugares, utilizado em voos de treino ou reconhecimento. Apesar de ser outono, o dia estava magnífico e a visibilidade aérea era excelente. E depois dos últimos preparativos, o Chipmunk do Tenente Guerra levantou o voo da pista da OTA. Já perfeitamente habituado àquele tipo de voo, o experiente piloto da Força Aérea pilotava o Chipmunk tranquilamente pelos céus e tudo corria dentro da total normalidade. Contudo, seria na vertical da Serra de Monte Junto que aquele voo, aparentemente calmo, iria transformar-se numa viagem perfeitamente alucinante. Ao sobrevoar aquela zona, o piloto avistou um objeto bastante brilhante, a que inicialmente associaria a voar muito próximo do Sol. As características daquela estranha aeronave e a sua baixa altitude de voo intrigaram de imediato o tenente-guerra, que, curioso, decidiu ir ao seu encontro. Mas pouco tempo depois, algo completamente inesperado aconteceu. Como que pressentindo a perseguição do piloto, aquela suposta aeronave elevou-se bruscamente no ar, a grande velocidade, e colocou-se em poucos segundos à altitude do chipmunk do tenente-guerra. Perplexo, o piloto apercebeu-se então que não estava perante uma aeronave, mas sim de algo de absolutamente incrível e inexplicável. A uma curta distância do seu avião, pairava um misterioso objeto voador com cerca de 2 metros de diâmetro, semelhante a uma bolha de mercúrio, sem asas, cauda ou qualquer sistema de propulsão visível. Era constituído por 2 hemisférios, divididos no sentido equatorial por uma espécie de saliência, sendo que o seu hemisfério inferior tinha uma cor avermelhada, metálica e brilhante. De repente, o insólito objeto começou a descrever largos círculos elípticos à volta do chipmunk do piloto, obrigando-o a fazer curvas mais apertadas para não o perder de vista. O tenente-guerra apercebeu-se então de que, enquanto o seu chipmunk à velocidade de 170 km/h levava cerca de meio minuto a efetuar um círculo apertado, o engenho desconhecido levava sensivelmente meio minuto a descrever uma volta com o diâmetro aproximado de 7 km e um perímetro na ordem dos 21 km. Através de um pequeno cálculo, o piloto concluiu que aquele objeto se estava a deslocar à fantástica velocidade de 2.500 km/h. Completamente abismado, o tenente-guerra, através do rádio do seu avião, relatou para a torre da base aérea da OTA e para outros camaradas que se encontravam em voo que estava em contacto visual com um estranho objeto voador cuja origem não conseguia perceber. O seu relato foi inicialmente tomado como uma brincadeira pela maioria dos seus camaradas, que, como resposta, lhe dirigiram alguns gracejos. Mas a insistência do piloto-guerra despertou a curiosidade de 2 outros pilotos, os alferes Carlos Garcês e António Gomes, que se encontravam em voo ali perto aos comandos de uma outra aeronave e que decidiram, ainda ao longe, os 2 pilotos viram o avião do tenente-guerra, que continuava a descrever curvas apertadas, e um pouco abaixo do avião, um pequeno ponto brilhante que, àquela distância, era quase imperceptível. No entanto, ao aproximarem-se, puderam confirmar a veracidade dos relatos do piloto-guerra. Na realidade, o que ao longe parecia ser um pequeno ponto brilhante, ao perto era um misterioso objeto voador de cor metalizada, com a forma de uma bolha de mercúrio. O alfer Garcês entrou imediatamente em contacto com a base, confirmando os relatos do piloto-guerra e descrevendo novamente aquele singular objeto voador. Depois, para que, em conjunto, melhor pudessem acompanhar as evoluções do misterioso objeto voador, desfasou o voo do seu avião em cerca de 180 graus em relação ao do guerra. Contudo, e fazendo mais um movimento inesperado, o objeto voador mudou de direção e passou rapidamente por entre os 2 aviões. E nesse momento, os pilotos puderam confirmar a sua estranha natureza e as suas reais dimensões. O objeto voador abandonou então as suas evoluções externas, posicionou-se entre os 2 aviões e, deslocando-se no mesmo sentido, passou a efetuar evoluções internas aos círculos por eles descritos. De repente, ao ver o objeto voador a fazer uma súbita trajetória ascendente, o tenente decidiu fazer uma manobra arriscada. Ia tentar interceptá-lo. Percebendo o perigo daquela manobra, Os dois alferes apelaram ao piloto para que abandonasse aquele perigoso plano. Porém, o temerário piloto manteve a sua decisão e dirigiu o seu avião em direção ao pequeno objeto voador. Este não alterou nem por 1 milímetro a sua trajetória. As duas aeronaves ficaram então em rota de colisão iminente. Mas no último momento, quando a colisão parecia ser inevitável, sem reduzir a sua velocidade e através de uma brusca manobra evasiva, o pequeno objeto voador desviou-se rapidamente do avião, evitando assim um terrível embate. Em choque, os três pilotos ainda conseguiram ver o objeto a afastar-se em direção à Serra de Sintra, acabando depois por desaparecer. Tendo terminado aquela incrível aventura, os dois aviões regressaram à base da OTA, onde aterraram sem qualquer problema por volta das 11h45. E embora já se tenham passado mais de 2 décadas, ainda hoje, o audaz piloto guerra se lembra dessa incrível e inexplicável aventura.
O dia 2 de novembro de 1982 não foi nenhum dia especial, foi um dia normal da vida, portanto, o piloto na esquadra, eu na esquadra de 101 de Shipman, tinha que fazer os meus voos de treino e nesse dia estava bom para fazer um voo de treino de acrobacia. Eu estava na subida, já na zona a oeste do Monte Junto, para subir para a volta de cerca de 6.000 pés, que era o máximo de altitude da zona de trabalho, e quando estou por 5.000, 5.500 pés, vejo que a primeira reação que eu tive, que era um avião que estava a passar nessa zona, tanto junto ao chão. Antes que eu tivesse uma reação para a torre, simultaneamente, a gente está sempre a ver o que é que está lá em baixo, fico admirado quando, na verdade, vejo aquilo que me parecia ser o cockpit de um avião a brilhar com o sol, mas que, repentinamente, eu não vejo asas e não vejo o resto da fuselagem, vejo só um cockpit a brilhar. Voltei imediatamente o avião para cima desse suposto avião, que, na verdade, cheguei à conclusão que não era avião, quando acabo de fazer a volta 180 graus para sul, que era o trajeto desse suposto avião, que não seria avião. Esse objeto fica à minha altitude. Para os meios aéreos que eu conhecia, isto era impossível. Os aviões não conseguem fazê-la, não têm subida vertical. E essa bola que estava junto ao chão aparece-me em frente do nariz do meu avião. E logicamente que depois de eu ver que apenas via aquela bolha metálica, não via asas, não via a estrutura do avião, eu vi logo que não estava com o avião à vista. E começa a descrever elipses no sentido da direita para a esquerda, portanto no sentido retrógrado aos ponteiros do relógio. E para acompanhar o objeto tive que fazer voltas muito apertadas. E logo que começo a ver o objeto a descrever aquelas elipses, que vejo que há qualquer coisa que controla o objeto ou que ele tem um movimento mais ou menos controlado, eu liguei na frequência para a torre da OTA e informei a torre da OTA que estava com um objeto, eu disse um objeto esquisito à minha frente. E daí um pouco é que colegas meus que também estavam lá na zona começaram a fazer as suas exclamações, que é normais na vida militar. Eu, logicamente, perante o que estava ali a ver, não podia aceitar os comentários que estavam a ser feitos, só disse aos meus colegas que, meu senhor, se acham que eu estou maluco ou se é uma bola, eu venham cá ver que eu estou aqui com este objeto. E aí é que surgiu o meu colega, o Garcês e o Gomes, que estavam num voo de treino noutra zona, mais próximo de mim.
Resolvemos ir ver o que se passava. Como sabíamos a posição geográfica de cada um de nós, né? Fomos ter à área onde ele estava e foi aí que nos deparámos com o que estava de facto a acontecer. Né? Nós entramos na volta, juntámos-nos à volta do avião, à volta que ele estava a fazer.
No momento em que houve uma das passagens que o objeto fez, em que eu fiquei dentro da trajetória do objeto, o objeto fica chapado como projetado no meu avião.
E aí deu-nos a noção de que realmente estava ali e que teria uns 2,5 metros, 3 de diâmetro, não teria mais, isto julgando pela envergadura que nós conhecemos do avião, a distância que estávamos uns dos outros, fazendo uma ligeira comparação.
Então eu pensei aproximar-me o mais possível do objeto. Tentei ir fazer a interseção, mas quando entro a fazer essa manobra de interseção, fiquei espantadíssimo.
O Júlio Guerra tentou interceptá-lo, atirou o avião para cima dele.
Ele fez uma travagem aerodinâmica por ele. Ele não bateu no meu avião porque ele é que fez essa manobra. Porque eu fiquei completamente como anestesiado, parado, não tive reação capaz à velocidade que o objeto vinha para cima de mim. Depois de ganhar outra vez inércia e de voltar a controlar-se a ele próprio, ou de ficar estável no ar, desapareceu, portanto, voando para sudoeste, para a zona de Sintra.
Devido à estranheza do insólito objeto e a todas as extraordinárias nuances do avistamento, o caso da OTA depressa ficou conhecido como sendo um dos mais marcantes a nível de fenómenos OVNI em Portugal. Sendo assim, muitos foram aqueles que o quiseram investigar de uma forma mais aprofundada, como foi o caso do STEC, Centro Transdisciplinar dos Estudos da Consciência.
Bom, o caso da OTA é, porventura, um dos casos mais importantes dos não identificados portugueses. A nossa organização foi contactada para investigar no terreno realmente o que se tinha passado relativamente à observação desses 3 pilotos. Vamos fazer o melhor que pudermos. Normalmente fazemos o que é lógico fazer-se, que é falar com as pessoas, deixá-las falar. Fomos à OTA para entrevistar os pilotos. Depois preenchem os tais inquéritos. Eles já tinham preenchido o inquérito preliminar, que era um inquérito mais simples, depois preencheram um inquérito mais específico. As aeronaves envolvidas, os equipamentos, foram revistos, mal aterraram. Eles aterraram muito pouco tempo depois desta situação. Eles foram imediatamente revistos, não houve nenhuma anomalia, não se detectou nada.
O certo é que tanto a forma do objeto como a sua performance durante o avistamento são bastante peculiares e, nos parâmetros da ciência atual, impossíveis de catalogar.
Nós temos aqui um conjunto de fenómenos que não cabem na paramétrica, no quadro explicativo dos conhecimentos atuais, nomeadamente da física. As viragens súbitas, brutas, que realmente são reportadas, implicam acelerações que, realmente, a serem produzidas com materiais que nós conhecemos à superfície da Terra, não seriam suportadas por esses materiais.
De facto, naquele dia nós vimos algo que, à luz dos nossos conhecimentos, que a gente sabe de física, de aerodinâmica, aquilo por simplesmente não pode voar. Não existe.
Um avião já poderia perfeitamente ter aquela velocidade. No entanto, as acelerações que eles relatam ou que eles conseguem derivar através do movimento da aeronave são